This is the Patriots Catch-22 podcast with Evan Lazar and Alex Barth.
I'm Evan Lazar. Evan Lazar. Hello, everybody. Nailed it. Joined as always by our Barth. That's a fit. That's a match. No risk it, no biscuit.
22.
Here is Evan Lazar and Alex Barth.
They're not going to be able to get the rest of the roster where they need it to be.
Fair enough. Let's move on because we're stuck here.
You just want to talk about two guys playing catch. You don't want to talk about football.
100%. That's exactly what it is. Well, Alex, we definitely get to talk about two guys playing catch today.
Definitely. That's all non-padded practices are.
This is literally all it is two guys playing catch in shorts and a t-shirt and a helmet. Not to come out here and say that you shouldn't listen to the next 2 hours of us pouring over all of our notes from that 2-hour session this morning of shorts and a t-shirt and a helmet. But the point is and I wanted to make this point anyways, because I feel as I say this every year, and you're going to make fun of me when I say this, but every year that we do this, and this is let's just tell everybody how old we are.
7.
Year 7 for both of us. We started the same year. So this is year 7 for both of us, which is...
Have we been doing this longer than most of the guys have been in the league?
Oh, yeah.
We got to be getting there.
Yeah.
The average NFL career is like 5-6 years.
It does dawn on me now when we talk to guys that I really am older than all these guys at this point.
Well, I was chatting with, so I did the pre-practice thing this morning with Sarge where he goes down and talks to reporters, and they had Sony Michel go before me.
Yeah.
Tough act to follow. And we're waiting, and I was chatting.
You don't have a Super Bowl ring?
I was chatting with him. Very nice guy, by the way. Very nice guy. I was chatting with him, and I was like, yeah, it was great covering you. He goes, oh, yeah, I remember you were there. I was like, yeah, oh, yeah, your first year was my first year. Look, he's won how many rings? He's now out of the league. He's living his life, doing business. Good for him. But, yeah, it's been a minute.
We've been doing this a minute. We've been doing this a little while now. And one of the things that I've learned from the experience is that these first couple of days, you want to come out guns blazing. You want to have takes. You want to have opinions. You want to start formulating your roster projection and all these different things. But the reality of the situation is that we are not even scratching the surface of real football. And the thing that dawns on me with this as well, we were talking about this a little bit on the live show yesterday on PU. Last year we went out to Green Bay. Deuce and I went out to Green Bay for those joint practices. And for all intents and purposes, those joint practices were relatively even. The two teams. The Patriots won the first day. The Packers kind of controlled play the second day. Those two seasons could not have gone differently. They literally, we got to the season and it went like this for those two teams. And it just goes to show, as much as we love, and I feel like I'm saying this, and it's making the stuff we do sound irrelevant, but it just goes to show where I want to try to keep my head, which is level at this point in time.
Right.
With that being said, you are going to hear a lot, and objectively speaking, you're going to hear a lot about how the offense had a tough day today. It did not look pretty at times for the Patriots offense. But if I'm going to be true to my word, and I'm not going to jump to any conclusions, and I'm going to not ride the roller coaster of the Patriots training camp this year, because you know me, I sometimes I get on the Six Flags ride.
How you feeling about Taekwon, Evan?
Exactly. I'm trying so hard not
we'll
to
get to Taekwon.
We'll get to Taekwon. Pull me back in.
Let's make the big point, and then we'll get to that. The big
point, and I'm not doing a good job of landing this plane quickly.
Yeah.
The big point is that I don't want to come in here with a bunch of knee-jerk reactions. That's not what we do, and I'm not trying to do that. So if you're worried about some of the reports that you're seeing from practice that the offense had a bad day, I understand. And but I don't think it's anything that we didn't already know about the offense. The offensive line is going to be a work in progress. Period. Yeah, that's it. It's going to be
that shouldn't be news.
It's going to be work in progress. There are question marks about the validity of the pass catching group. If they have enough high-end talent to go out there and make big plays. That's going to be a question mark. So I don't feel like I've learned anything new about my concerns, but because we have a show to do today and we should tell you what we saw, it was a shaky day for the offense.
Yeah, I think just on the big picture of the previous 2 days, where I come from is what I always harp on in the spring. These non-padded practices, there's information here. There's important information here. It's just not necessarily in the results. It's in the approach. And that's both from the coaches and the players. So most of my takeaways from the first couple of days is who's on the field, who isn't, who's playing with who's playing over who, and then how some individual players are approaching things. I'm sure we'll get to Drake Maye, but like my big takeaway on Drake Maye has nothing to do with his performance. But he came out aggressive. He came out ready to compete. And yeah, I mean, he's going to compete. You expect that, but you never know with a rookie. It's really easy to come out and, I just don't want to screw up. I don't want to get anybody mad at me. I'm going to take my check downs. And at least on day one, he didn't do a ton of that. He did a little bit more of that today, but all the quarterbacks did because of the line again. But I'm more interested in the approach, in the philosophy that we see from the first few days. We'll get to the real football. That comes on Monday.
Yeah.
But there is still information here. There is still absolutely information here. Like I had circled, I wrote a thing before camp. You can still check it out, 985thesportshub.com, on 6 players I thought might surprise for a roster spot. Guys that aren't being talked about, that maybe they're not going to come in and be the team's MVP for the season, but I think they're going to be here. And one of them was tight end Mitchell Wilcox.
Yeah.
And he's been on the field a ton the last 2 days. He hasn't necessarily done a lot in terms of catching the ball, but he's a blocking tight end. That's his role. They need that. So that, to me, is more what you take away from this period. We get a better idea. We spent so much time, those months between the spring and the start of camp. Well, what are the battles and who's competing with who and what spots are up for grabs? We're kind of seeing that all play out in terms of where guys stand during these few days. And then once the pads come on, that's when you start having the discussion of, okay, well, who's actually winning these battles?
That's the evaluation period.
Right.
Is starting on Monday. And that's all where I'm coming from. The main thing is just, like I said, none of what we're telling you should come as a surprise.
Right.
That they're still trying to figure things out on the offensive line, and that the receivers, although there are some flashes from some of the younger players and from Taekwon, let's be honest.
We'll get to Taekwon.
And Jalen Reagor a little bit earlier. Yeah, our headphones are popping a little bit. But I think we're good. Even though there are some concerns on offense, like if I had told you before they even started practicing on Wednesday that the offensive line might be a little bit concerning and the receivers might not create a ton of downfield separation, you would have told me, well, duh.
Right.
Yeah, I can look at the roster on paper and I can feel that. So I just wanted to get that out there because I know that there are going to be some knee-jerk reactions to some of the things, and I just wanted to make sure we get that out there. Before we really get rolling here, hey, Patriots fans, if you want to see Toyota's best offers, including those not seen on TV, go to buyatoyota.com. It's Toyota's official website for deals from the official vehicle of the New England Patriots. Toyota, let's go places, and easy to drink, easy to enjoy. Bud Light, the official beer sponsor of the New England Patriots. Want to do some bookkeeping before we open it up to the phone lines, which are open 855-PATS-500, webradio at patriots.com, as always, is the email address. And I have a bunch of notes that I wanted to just run through with you.
Yep.
And then you can obviously add anything that I missed. But before I did want to get into some bookkeeping type stuff. So in terms of attendance, the PUP and NFI guys are still the same. That hasn't changed.
Well, Gibson got activated today.
So is he officially activated?
I think he has to be because he was on the field in uniform.
He was on the field in uniform, and he went through stretching.
Right.
So
that's usually the bar.
Yeah. So we'll find out what the wire, if that makes the wire today. If not, but he was there. We had a sighting.
Yeah.
We had Antonio Gibson sighting, so that's good, positive news. Devon Godshaw. This is where I wanted to start. Now, there's a report out there, I believe from Mark Daniels, that Christian Barmore is feeling a little under the weather, and that's why he was a little limited today. I don't know if Devon Godshaw is in the same boat, if it's an injury, if it's an illness, whatever. But bottom line is he was out there yesterday. He was out there today for the second hour of team drills, but he was not participating. And by the looks of it, again, I'm just purely speculating, but by the looks of it, it felt like a hold-in type of situation. And we know he's unhappy about his contract. He's made that publicly clear. So Devon Godshaw is either holding in or is dealing with something minor. I don't know. But assuming, just for the sake of the show, that he is holding in, where do you stand right now currently with what they should do with Devon Godchaux? Because I think Matthew Judon's playing ball. I think Matthew Judon's going to be out there.
Yeah.
And my guess is that they will reward him at some point for not going this route with it. But with Godchaux, do you feel like, where do you feel things stand with Devon Godchaux right now?
Yeah, I mean, I get it looked like a hold-in today, but why would he be a full participant yesterday?
Yeah.
And then hold in today? That doesn't make sense. So I think he's a full participant. As for his contract, I've said this. If it's one of the two, you pay Judon. If you can work something out with Godchaux too, great. But I don't know if they want to maybe draw a line with all these contracts they've been giving out, things like that. And what's Godshaw's role? They've talked about being more aggressive. Does that mean less two-gapping on defense? Where does his role play in with that? Is he going to be more aggressive? Is he going to be more of a pass rusher? We did see him, make a play as a pass rusher on day one of camp, but his situation is a little more complicated than Matthew Judon's is. And I don't know if you noticed, but towards the end of practice, Robert Kraft came out of the building, talked to Matthew Judon for a little bit. Then he was talking with Elliott Wolf. Gerard Mayo came over. So whatever you want to make of that.
Does seem like something is maybe brewing.
There were conversations. What they were about, I don't know, but there were conversations.
Be a fly on the wall for that.
Yeah.
My whole thing with Devon Godchaux has not changed, and I just feel. And again, when I talk about players like this, I hope that people recognize that this is not personal whatsoever with the player. But I just don't really understand. I don't understand what his leverage is, frankly, because at this stage of just the NFL ether, Devon Godchaux is like maybe a 2-down player. He's a rotational nose tackle that's going to play on first and second down, but primarily just on first down as a run stuffer. He's not a pass rusher. He's not a third down player. He's not a passing game player. They're going to bring in, and we saw it today, even though he wasn't out there, I don't think he's in that pass rush package, even if he is in there. So we're going to see them bring in players like a Armon Watts, like a Daniel Aquale. Obviously, Christian Barmore will be in that mix to rush on the interior in obvious passing situations. It's not going to be Devon Godchaux. So, yes, I agree with Godchaux to an extent that he plays a role that if you really watch the film, that he makes a big impact in their run defense. And they had a great run defense last year with him in the middle. No doubt about that. But if you look at the compensation on his contract, he's pretty fairly compensated this year for what his role is. He's making, what, 10.5, I think it is, $11 million to play football for the Patriots this year. As a 2-down run-stuffing nose tackle, that's a pretty good deal. Like, it's not a very valuable position, and we've talked about this a lot with the draft, and everything always trickles up from the draft. How many guys have we thrown out there, Alex, over the last couple of years that were in this mold of a nose tackle, a true 3-4, 2-gapping nose tackle, and those guys don't get drafted high anymore. You wait. Some of these guys, remember, like a Marquand McCall, goes undrafted.
Right.
These guys just aren't valued around the league anymore. So I'm finding a hard time figuring out what Devon Godchaux's leverage truly is. I
think it's intangibles. I think it's as a
veteran leader.
As a leader, as a culture guy, things like that. In addition to, he does, like you say, plays his role well, and that's part of it. And then, they're trying to establish a new culture. They're trying to get guys to go a certain way inside the building and beat to the tune of a certain drum. And he probably believes he's a guy that can help them establish that. And he might not be wrong.
Right.
But
I just think from an on-field perspective,
right, is that worth the extra money?
You can't bow down to everybody, right? Like, you can't, because you're handing out these extensions, and that's what Judon said yesterday, and this is what people like Paul have been worried about with these contract extensions internally, these retaining players with these contract extensions. The fear is that Devon Godchaux and Matthew Judon are going to sit there and say, well, Barmore got his, Ramondre got his, Duggar got his, where's mine, right? And in some respects, you do need to be wary of that. And I think Judon is a fair gripe because of how little he has in money coming to him this year. But I just don't feel the same way about Godchaux, and I would be careful about just bending the knee to everybody and just giving everybody a little something.
So when they were giving out all these extensions, people said, well, where do you draw the line? Yeah. And it's a fair question.
Yeah.
It's a fair question. Certainly not before Matthew Judon.
Yeah.
He's worth paying. Devon Godshot, yeah. Maybe that's where you start to have that conversation. I know Joshua Uche had been thrown out, like certainly with him, because he just signed a deal like 3 months ago.
Right.
But that's I feel like he's that. Devon Godshot might be the answer to that question.
He might be the line.
That might be it.
Yeah, he
that
might be the
it.
line.
And that's nothing against him. That's just for where they're at, for what he wants. It doesn't make a lot of sense. At that point, you're just signing the deal kind of to sign it.
Yeah. Yep, I agree. All right, so that's Godshaw. I do want to circle back really quickly to Antonio Gibson in a second, but just a few other bookkeeping notes.
Keep the books, Evan. Keep on keeping the books.
Pop Douglas hasn't really been practicing the last 2 days.
You want my theory on this?
I do want your theory on this.
I would call it a theory, not even a take. I would call it a theory.
Okay, what is it?
They're going to bury him again. Remember last year he had like 2 great weeks at camp?
Yeah.
And then he just didn't practice? And he wasn't hurt or anything?
But everybody already knows what he is. Like, what's the point in burying him?
More. He's going to be more.
You think he's going to be...
I think part of it is he's going to be more, and part of it is they want to make sure he's healthy.
Yeah. So
I think there's a real chance that they just look at him and say, you're good. We got a lot of receivers we need to get through to evaluate. We know what you can do. We don't want you getting hurt. We don't want to show people the cool, fun, gadgety stuff we're going to do with you. Go right. He had the zoomies today at practice. He's running up and down the sideline on his own.
yeah.
Like, I think they're burying him again.
So they're hiding him.
Hiding him.
They're not burying him, because burying him...
That's true. That's the wrong word. Yeah, hiding him.
Because burying him to me is like to make him to the practice squad, which is not what the case is with this, right? Hiding him is an interesting take. I hadn't thought of that.
It's not a take. It's a theory.
Okay, it's an interesting theory. I hadn't thought of that because, to me, you have a brand new offense, brand new coaching staff, brand new quarterback. You got to get this guy reps. Now, could they give him reps once the doors close to practice?
Yep.
In the end of August?
Yep.
Theoretically. But that's a big question with him, and always has been with him in the draft now after his rookie season. It is very abundantly clear that Pop Douglas is a dynamic playmaker, both as a route runner and with the football in his hands. But at 5'8", 180 pounds, can he hold up? Like, durability-wise, can you feed him 125 targets a year? Is he going to make it through a 17-game season with that high a volume? Because, especially on this roster, you'd want to give him that much volume because he's probably the most dynamic player you have on offense right now. So you'd want to feed him the rock. But is he going to be able to withstand the wear and tear of a season? That remains to be seen. So maybe,
and that's part of the reason why this time you just say, hey, man.
Managing the body blows.
You're good. You're good. We know what you can do.
Okay.
We'll see you when the reporters get out of here.
I like that theory. So Barmore, we mentioned the illness kind of limited a little bit today. Pop Douglas has been, as Alex said, doing wind sprints off to the side by himself and having a grand old time with that, apparently. Devon Godshaw, hold in, injury, illness, whatever, didn't participate today.
I don't know. We'll see what happens tomorrow. I don't want to be like too short-sighted on it, but it would just be so weird for him to come out the first day, fully participate, and then say, "No, I'm good."
Yeah,
like that's just what's the message you're trying to send there?
Fair enough. And Marte Mapu, there we go. Also, not very active in today's practice. Was pretty active yesterday, I felt like, or was playing his role in the defense, I guess I should say. I'm not necessarily saying he made a ton of splash plays or anything like that on the ball, but he was out there. He was participating. Today, not as much. That one is still, to me, and when we talked to Gerard Mayo, was it yesterday before practice, we talked a little bit about Marte Mapu and just what's his role, and is he a linebacker, is he safety? I don't feel like he flat out said that they're asking the same questions internally about what he is. So that makes our show relevant, I guess, because we have this conversation once a week.
But here's and I'm not sitting here telling you I think he is a linebacker. I'm sitting here telling you try it and find out.
Yeah.
And at the very least do that, and that's kind of what Mayo said. Now, he said they'll figure that out when the pads come on. So for whatever reason, that doesn't start yet. Yeah. Maybe just because they feel you can't fully evaluate that position without pads on, which he's right. Yeah. But no, we've had that, Evan. We've had that conversation. Is he a safety? Is he a linebacker? I don't know, but you got to play him to find out.
Right.
And it sounds like we're going to get some of that. Again, like we said off top of the show, if they do it in the next 3 or 4 days, whatever, it's really once the pads come on that becomes a little more interesting.
My take on that is kind of evolving, but I want to save it because I want to talk about Marcus Jones in the slot and what's going on there. In a little bit.
You have a take. Give the take.
I wonder with Marte Mapu if there's not a role for him as a slot, as a nickel, where a lot of teams nowadays are playing more safeties in that spot on early downs because you are in the fit as a strong side linebacker, essentially. Like that's the new strong side linebacker. There is no more strong side linebacker, right? Like you have in a nickel, you have 5 defensive backs. You're not necessarily playing, 3 or 4 linebackers anymore. So the nickel or the slot corner is at the point of attack a lot in the run game. So over the last couple of years, whether it was Marcus Jones, Jonathan Jones, Miles Bryant, the Patriots just haven't had a ton of size in that spot, and their run defense hasn't necessarily taken a huge hit because of it. But I wonder if Marte Mapu's destiny on this team is to be like a nickel safety, where the guy that comes to mind for me is Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, who's probably one of the best at it in the league. At times, I guess you could make the argument that Honey Badger plays that type of role as well, but it does it a little bit in his own way. But you're talking about, I like the idea of discussing having a bigger body just on early downs.
Sure.
And now if you play a team that's a spread team, that's 11 personnel, and they have 3 receivers on the field 95% of the time, and they're in the gun all the time, you don't need it then.
He's a game plan player.
It's a game plan player against these Shanahan tree offenses that are going to be heavy, that are going to be under center, that are going to want to run the ball at you, and is somebody that is a little bit girthier, a little bit stronger at the point of attack, because I like what I've seen from Marcus Jones in coverage in the slot so far.
He's been good.
He's been one of their better players on the field. He's definitely their best man coverage option in that role right now to play in the slot. But on first down, does he all of a sudden become a target for teams, especially teams like Miami, the Jets, who are running this type of offense now with Hackett? Like, those teams are going to look at that and they're going to say, we are going to put Marcus Jones at the point of attack in the run game. And we are going to make Marcus Jones defeat blocks and make tackles to set the edge of the defense. That, to me, is not going to end well for the Patriots. So I do wonder if Marte Mapu's destiny is a nickel safety, because he's not going to play deep. He's really not going to play the Kyle Duggar rover role either, right? Like that's taken. He's blocked to play like a true box safety. There's 2 guys ahead of him on the depth chart to play that kind of role, in Jabril Peppers and Kyle Duggar, and they still don't seem totally gung-ho about him playing at the second level full time.
Real quick first, Phil Perry tweeted out 2 hours ago, Demario Douglas is dealing with a hand injury. So there goes my theory. But to your point about Marte Mapu,
that's why it was a theory.
Right, exactly. That's why it wasn't a take. To your point about Marte Mapu, which I think is interesting in the context of this defense, like you said, they haven't necessarily had that big, strong side run presence at the second level, but they have played a very disciplined, edge set aware defense with Dietrich Wise or whoever's over there, Lawrence Guy at times in the past. They had a guy whose primary job was to do that.
Yeah, or Anthony Jennings, if you want to go further out. Yeah.
So now they've talked about playing this more aggressive defense. Maybe those guys aren't as concerned with contain, and they're more concerned about penetrating. Yeah. If that's the case, now you are exposing Jonathan Jones, Marcus Jones, whoever's in the slot more, and that's where a player like Marte Mapu could come in.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly, we just kind of connected the dots for each other, because I just feel like, yes, against certain matchups, if you're going to play a team that deploys a true slot receiver, like I'll just give you examples because it's easier. When you play Buffalo and Khalil Shakir is in the slot, you're not going to have Marte Mapu covering Khalil Shakir. Like that's a bad matchup for the Patriots. It's a receiver against a safety / linebacker, whatever you want to call him, right? It's a bad matchup. That's more of a matchup for Marcus Jones, or maybe Alex Austin breaks into the top 3 and Jonathan Jones covers Shakir, or whatever the case may be. But when you get into these Dolphins, Jets, San Francisco, which they'll play this year, like those types of teams, They are going to run a lot more 21 or 12. They're going to be more heavy personnel, and then you can match heavy with heavy and maybe be in like a 3-safety nickel. And if you're in a 3-safety nickel, maybe Marte Mapu is your third safety as the nickel safety. That to me is a really good idea. It's a theory, a really good theory for Marte Mapu. He's got to be healthy. Whatever happened with him today, I don't know. And second to that, I do think that there is a world where that is a somewhat limited role, where it's a strictly game plan style thing. And if that's the case, then he might only be a 35% snap guy at the end of the year. And then we're going to have the conversation of, well, he was a top 100 pick and he's not playing.
Well, look, if he's here, play him where he's going to help you the most.
Yeah.
Or don't play him if that's what's going to help you the most. Like, he's here. We can bemoan the draft pick all we want, but in the context of the 2024 Patriots, then they shouldn't have taken him, doesn't do anything.
Fair enough.
So you got to, at this point, it's up to Gerard Mayo and DeMarcus Covington to figure out where can this guy help us the most, or just understand, yes, he was a third-round pick, but we don't have a role for him, so we're just going to leave him on special teams because that's what's best for the football team.
Yeah, I've always just loved Chauncey Gardner-Johnson's game.
He's a good player.
I think he's a dog.
He plays, he's got another, I'm sure he's a nice guy, but he's got another level of angry and a-hole in him when he's on the field.
He's a dog. And I feel like the league in a lot of ways has trended in this direction because of all these Shanahan-inspired teams. You just can't get away with having a 180-pound corner on the field in the slot anymore. I
looked him up when you said that, and he's listed at 5'11", 208. I would have guessed he's playing closer to 220 the way he plays.
Yeah, he's a mean dude. All right, really quickly circling back to Antonio Gibson. This is something that we have talked about a ton on this show. And you, a couple weeks ago when we were doing one of those off-season shows, we got into a discussion about, Evan, I care about RB3 on this team. And has hell frozen over? Like, what's going on here, right? Like, the RBs don't matter guy cares about running backs. This is exactly why, because for the first 2 days of training camp, Antonio Gibson has not participated. Now, the good news is that Gerard Mayo doesn't feel like it's serious, and he was out there today in uniform, briefly stretched, then he disappeared to the conditioning field. But that does usually signal that he's getting closer, right? Like, it's not going to be a long-term absence. Like, he's not going to be out for the year or anything like that. Like, he's going to play. So, with that being said, though, it has opened the door to the fact that they do not have a whole lot of proven running back depth behind Ramondre Stevenson and Gibson. So, we're back to this whole thing again. Do they have a guy on the roster that we feel like can carve out a role as the third running back? Do they have a guy that they can keep around, whether it's on the active roster or the practice squad, as a fourth running back? Like, do they have enough running backs?
Right.
Is really what I'm trying to say, period. And something tells me that this might end with Elliott Wolf having to get on the horn and calling in a veteran running back that has some NFL experience.
Well, I'll tell you this. They worked out Monday. Do you remember Demetric Felton?
Yeah, so it's funny.
So we were big Demetric Felton guys in the draft that year.
We were big, and I was a big Antonio Gibson guy, and it's kind of a Spider-Man meme situation. They're pretty similar players.
Felton's much smaller.
But they're, in terms of how were used in college, I remember them being pretty similar.
Well, kind of. Felton was a converted receiver. Felton played receiver his first few years. Oh, that's right, he was.
Yeah.
He's just much big. I just think of it as much bigger. Felton's small, and he can return kicks and things like that. And he played for Van Pelt for 2 years in Cleveland.
Yeah.
So a guy like that, I would take Felton over any of the third options they have, unless they want just a bowling ball. In which case, Felton's definitely not the guy. He's like 180 pounds.
Is he really that small? I gotta look this up.
I might be, or maybe I think he's like 5'8", 190, 5'9", 190.
5'9", 185 is what I'm seeing.
Okay, so
yeah, so he's smaller than I thought he was.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's definitely more.
But he's quick.
Yeah, he's definitely more of like a scat back type.
Yeah.
Though. Like Antonio Gibson's really fast in a straight line. He's an explosive.
Well,
guy.
we were talking about Felton in that draft as being like a potential James White replacement.
Yeah, but it doesn't surprise me at all that their call was to Demetric Felton for that workout when they weren't 100% sure what was going on with Antonio Gibson, because I do think stylistically they should fit into similar roles within the confines of the offense. But I guess it's one of those things of like, why not both, right?
Right.
I hear you. I mean, the way that I've seen it, and I probably haven't done as good of a job as tracking this because we've been on the air for the first 2 practices, but it seems like Kevin Harris is getting the lion's share of the RB2
the most
or
involved.
RB3 reps right now. Hasn't been a whole lot of JaMychal Hasty.
Nope.
As of right now. And it hasn't been a whole lot of,
Deshaun Fenwick.
Fenwick.
Haven't seen him, and then Terrell Jennings on PUP.
Right. So where's our confidence level with Kevin Harris?
I got to see him when the pads come on. I mean, I haven't seen much from him, but he's a 220-pound downhill running back. Like, it doesn't really matter with him till the pads come on. He did drop a screen today, I think, or misplayed a ball on a screen, but you're not throwing him screens. He's not on the field to catch screens. He's on the field to put his helmet in some guy's chest and push him backwards. So we'll see. I mean, I've liked the flashes. There's just been so few and far between, and that's not his fault. He hasn't been given a ton of opportunities, but where's he at in year 3, right? Where's his development at? And I just think having another option in a guy like Felton would make a lot of sense.
It's a very, very small sample size for him in the NFL. I think it's 17 career carries or something like that. Maybe that was 1 year. It's not a lot, and I shouldn't do these things off the top of my head anymore because my memory is not that great. But he hasn't had a lot of carries or opportunities in the NFL.
It is 34 carries, 18
okay.
2 years ago, 16 last year.
I was right in the middle. I knew 17 was my average.
17 carries a year.
Yes. So it's not a large sample size, but his yards after contact data as a rookie was decent.
Well, but he had that one run in Arizona.
He had one run in Arizona.
That's
why
probably most of that.
Brought up the sample size.
Right.
Right. But he's had moments, and he's had moments in preseason games as well. He's not a big play explosive guy. He's a bowling ball. He's a big back that's going to run
5'10",
people.
225.
That's going to run people over. But as a between the tackles running back, he should be able to get the job done in a pinch. It's not a great option. Like, I'm not sitting here and tell you that they have tremendous running back depth, but with the way that we know running back value is equated, is he one of those guys that can just get what's blocked? Right? Like, I always call it the Ben Jarvis Green Ellis. Like, can he just get the 4 yards that's there
and not fumble?
And every once in a while, maybe he breaks a tackle or runs over somebody for an extra couple yards, and we're in business. Like, that's all you're really looking for out of that spot. I think that's possible. If you're looking for somebody that's a little bit more explosive, that's going to be a little bit more dynamic, then maybe you're calling Demetric Felton or somebody else.
Right.
So emailer Will emails in, talking about the running backs. A couple of emails about these, actually, Alex, to us about the running backs. And
the only show I was going to talk about, I tried to get Felger to talk about it last week. So it's like pins in his eyes.
It's one of those things that I've been reluctant to talk about it too, because you know how I feel about the running game.
Yeah.
But I have to be honest, and that is that they're going to run the ball. It's going to be a big part of their offense.
Yep.
I'm not totally gung-ho about it, but that's what they're going to do.
You're doing your job. As I always say, it's your job, Evan. Do it.
And just like in Cleveland, which we've seen in Cleveland over the years with Nick Chubb and some of their other backs, they drop like flies sometimes. And all of a sudden you're on, who was that guy that had that big Thursday night game in Cleveland a couple years ago that I'm breaking on? Was it... God, we should remember this. But yeah, it's like you pull somebody off the street and all of a sudden he's got a 150-yard game, right? Like that. Those types of guys are important. And over the course of 17 games, it's not what you're banking on your whole season. But if you need a spot start here and there, that needs to happen.
Was it Jerome Ford?
He did get some carries for them last year.
Yeah.
But no, not the guy I'm thinking of is not Jerome Ford.
Do you remember what year it was?
It was a couple years ago. It wasn't last year. It was I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. But the emailer asks a question that I feel like we've been asked a million times about running backs, and that's Kareem Hunt. And yes, he does have the experience in Cleveland with Alex Van Pelt, and it's an obvious connection. But I still remain skeptical that organizationally Kareem Hunt is going to be of interest to the Patriots.
It was DeErnest Johnson.
DeErnest Johnson.
AAF legend DeErnest Johnson of the
too.
Orlando Apollos.
DeErnest Johnson.
On Hunt, yeah, I'm with you. Just organizationally doesn't make a lot of sense. I've read some things. I don't know how much I believe them. I've seen a couple people list Nick Chubb as like a surprise camp cut.
What?
Right?
Cut?
I don't know where that's coming from.
That's wild. That's not happening.
I mean, it shouldn't even be 24 hours before he's here if that happens.
That's not happening.
I'm telling you what I saw.
That's crazy. That's not happening.
It is
He's
crazy.
one of the best running backs in the league.
Absolutely. I don't know if they're thinking like new offensive coaching staff and he's coming off the knee and whatever.
He's coming off one of the more gruesome knee injuries we've seen in the last couple of years in the league. Like, that was brutal injury that he had. So maybe. I mean, do you remember that it came out like, I don't know if it was him or somebody else like got a hold of the X-ray and the MRI from that knee injury, and it's just like a bomb went off in his kney. No, I'm pretty sure that was real.
Being fake. Yeah, people are talking about him as like a potential trade candidate, and
that's wild.
Just a couple places.
That's wild. Well, that's your
They'd
running
be
back,
dumb
Doc.
to do it. They'd be dumb to do it. Like, I wouldn't count on it. That shouldn't be Plan A.
No, it's an honest, fair question to have about their running back depth.
I'll give you one.
It is.
Well, we're on this.
Okay.
All right. So they're not going to. I don't think they're going to move on from Chubb. Maybe he opens the season on PUP.
Yeah.
But they have Jerome Ford, solid player. They have Donta Foreman, solid player. Like, they are kind of deep there at running back behind him. Naeem Hines they have him. He's on NFI, but they have him. Do you call about Pierre Strong, or if he gets cut? Like, Van Pelt clearly wanted him.
It's a better fit.
It's a better fit.
It's a better fit. This was the offense that they drafted Pierre Strong
I would
for.
absolutely take Pierre Strong back if that opportunity presents itself. And he was decent for them last year.
I wouldn't be surprised.
He made a couple plays for them last year.
Elliot Wolf, Matt Garreau, still here.
Yeah.
22 draft class. That was the offense that they drafted him and Cole Strange and Tyquan Thornton to be a part of, was to be more outside zone heavy. And they were trying to do that with Patricia. It's possible. That's a good call. Like, that's probably, if he's falls out of favor there, if he's a cut candidate, could they retrade him back to the Patriots? Like, obviously for a very minimal compensation.
Yeah.
But something along those lines, not a bad shout. Not a bad shout. All right, let's take some of these phone calls, and then we'll get to some of our other practice notes. I just want to point out, there's no other show. There's no other Patriots show that's going to go 40 minutes
nowhere
without talking about the quarterbacks. We went 40 minutes without even mentioning Drake May's name, I think.
I think I talked about him very briefly.
That was it. That's what we do here. We talk about the
third running back,
the third running back, and the nose tackle, and you can do
maybe linebacker, safety guy,
and us trying to put our coaches' hats on and talk about Marte Mapu's role, and you can save your quarterback talk.
That's what we
take
do.
it elsewhere.
Where's our awards?
All right, Matthew is in Virginia. What's up, Matthew? Matthew.
Hello?
Hey, how's it going?
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, go for it.
So I just have two questions for you guys. The first one is, did you guys see Gonzo? Was he looking good out there today? I know he's coming off that shoulder injury, but if he's looking good, I have a lot of faith he can be a top 5 corner. And the second thing is, I'm actually going to college this year. I just graduated high school. I'm going into college for journalism. I'm hoping to be a sports journalist. Do you guys have any tips for maybe a new starting sports journalist or wannabe beat reporter? Thanks, guys.
Thanks for the call, Matthew. So we'll answer both questions. The first question with Christian Gonzalez. He's been out there and participating in full, which is, for right now, is all I wanted to see.
That's all you got to say. And I asked him about that after practice today, just with that, is it nice to be back out there? He says it's the best feeling in the world.
Yeah.
So, and he's moving well and all that. Like, I don't want to downplay. I mean, he had a serious injury, but upper body injuries, lower body injuries, they're different, especially for corners.
Yeah. And he's been healthy for quite some time.
Yeah.
So he's good to go. He looks pretty smooth out there. I would say he's probably still getting his sea legs a little bit. He's let up a catch in front of him to Jalen Polk today. Not anything to like panic about or anything like that. But I feel like, in terms of just getting back into the swing of things, he's going to maybe be a beat behind. But for right now, the most important thing is that he's physically out there, looks the part, looks like Christian Gonzalez, moving around great, and is healthy. And that's the most important thing. All right, quickly, one piece of advice.
Don't say no to any opportunity. Nothing's below you. Nothing's too small. Nothing's whatever. Or even just the more you're saying yes, people know that, all right, I can count on this person. He's available. He's willing, all that. So I remember coming back from spring break, Evan, at Ithaca College, and getting a text that they needed somebody to fill a 6:26 a.m. sports update shift on the radio. This is like a 5-minute shift. You read a report, you're done. And I said yes, because that's just what you do. And afterwards, somebody's like, hey, really appreciate you filling in for that. Like, we noticed that, things like that. So never, the word no should not be a part of your vocabulary professionally.
You walk that walk, by the way, because you're on like 17 different podcasts.
This is my second of 4 shows today.
Yeah. So
yeah,
like,
for what it's worth, that's not advice for somebody going into college. That's just life advice for this field.
And you walk that walk for sure. Like sometimes I even ask you, like, why are you doing this show? And it's because
somebody asked me.
That's why. Yeah, you're a better man than me. My one piece of advice, I would say, I got great advice from somebody once that you probably heard this 17 times, but they said, they asked me like, who's somebody that currently has a job that you would want, that you emulate, that
right.
you look up to. And at the time I said Reese, and I said, I want to be a Patriots beat reporter. I want to be Mike Reese. And he said to me, well, then be Mike Reese. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I don't work for ESPN. I'm not credentialed. Like, I can't just, But his point was kind of fake it till you make it. Like, no one really knows what you're doing until you do it, And so there's no rule book. There's no playbook on like how to be a beat reporter. There's no real guideline or, whatever. He said to just watch what Reese does and
it's great advice.
Try to do what he does.
It's great advice, and it's something I always think about. They say dress for the job you want, not the job you have.
Yeah.
Forget dressing. Act like it.
Yeah.
I mean, do the job you currently have too, but act the way you want. How about Reese? By the way, he's been doing videos with some of those like younger kids who are trying to get into this at camp.
Yeah, I love that.
Our buddy Zach, I saw is out there in Carlos. That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
Good for them. Good for him.
Reese looks like he's been hitting the gym a little bit.
He does. He's in shape. Talk about
looks good.
We always do the who came into camp in shape, who looks like they're in good shape. Mike Reese,
best shape of his life. Dare I say, Mike Reese?
That's how we do it. That's usually the euphemism.
All right. Colleen is in Houston. What's up, Colleen?
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So I was thinking about like what I want or expect from this season, and I don't expect playoffs. I don't think most people do, but some people bring up 2001, and like that was a phenomenon. It'll never happen again, especially to the team it already happened for. But I was thinking about what I would consider a successful season, and for me, I want to see my team win. But if we get a great draft pick, and we can trade back and get a left tackle and a wide receiver, somehow finagle that would be a great year for me. But like last year when we beat the Broncos, I was all on board. Like I was super happy. So I'm curious, is there a number of wins or a draft position that you would consider a successful season? And then very quickly, go Matthew. You sound super wholesome. I believe in you. And also, I'm pissed that Joe Alt is becoming a right tackle because he was such a good left tackle that
good point.
Seems like a waste. Okay.
Thanks for the great call, Colleen.
Nailed it on Joe Alt. What the hell is Harbaugh doing?
Are we sure Jim Harbaugh is like all there? Like, are we sure that he's going to be good at this?
No,
again?
No, I don't think he is.
Did you see that he was wearing cleats out to practice, like he's lacing them up?
I don't remember if it was on this show. I was on a show.
He's worrying me a little bit.
And I dropped this take. No, I said this on the Sports Hub. I think I was on with Joe Murray. You want a hot take for the 2024 NFL season?
Jim Harbaugh stinks.
Jim Harbaugh's one and done.
Oh, one and done.
Jim Harbaugh's one and done. Whether he's not good enough or he just realizes, I don't want to do this. I want to go back to college because it's a very different game.
It's a different animal.
I think Jim Harbaugh's one and done in L.A.
Just some of the things, the Joe Alt thing, I couldn't agree more. Now, they have Rashawn Slater, who's one of the best left tackles in the league.
Right.
So it's hard to...
Trade down.
Yeah, I mean...
Trade down. Draft Fuanga.
Wasn't it some of the reports at the time that they tried? Or that was sort of... I feel like that was the plan.
Well, if they couldn't get anybody to take the 5th overall pick, they didn't try hard enough.
Well, all the quarterbacks were gone.
So what?
You're not trading up for J.J. McCarthy or Penix.
Rome Dunze.
Yeah, I guess the team could have...
Why am I blanking on the kid's name from LSU?
Malik Neighbors went 6.
Right. I meant to say Neighbors. I was blanking on his name. Malik Neighbors.
Wanted to jump the Giants for Malik
Nobody
Neighbors.
wanted Joe Alt. Yeah, a franchise left tackle sitting there.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted Joe Alt. And to Colleen's point, to go to another part of that question, what's a successful season? Like, I don't know that it's a win total or a specific draft pick number because I said this last year, like, there's no such thing as too many wins. they have to build a competitive culture. You don't want losing to become habitual. And the reality is they're in a position where they should be able to move around the draft board as they need. They're probably going to end up with a top 10 pick. There's 2 stud tackles we think in this draft, in Will Campbell and Kelvin Banks. You see Will Campbell put up 6'16" on a squat rack with a wink.
It's a stud.
Yeah, he might be special. He might be special.
Yeah.
But anyway, and look, if they walk out with Will Campbell or Kelvin Banks, that'd be great. If they can move up and take a receiver, at that point, you might just be better off trading that second-round pick for a veteran receiver. But yeah, I don't think there's like a number. What's a successful season to me is growth. Yeah. And I know that sounds like corporate, and people might cringe at that, but I mean it especially when it comes to Drake Maye. I got this weird question in a mailbag the other day, and I thought it was a good thought experiment, and it's lacking context, but the question was, would I rather see Drake Maye play 4 really good games and get hurt, or play 8 meh games and end the year healthy?
Like a Joe Burrow situation.
I guess, yeah. To which I said, well, if the 8 games are so-so, but he's still getting better throughout them, I would rather that than 4 games and he gets hurt, because season-ending injury, who knows what that means for his future. Like, I just need to see him be better at the end than they're at the beginning, especially the way this team has fallen off late in the season the last few years. So, if they win in 4 games, but 2 of those wins are in December, you might feel good about that. You might feel good about that going into the offseason. Who did that a couple years ago?
Detroit.
Well,
they got a little bit hotter than just that. Like they ended the year, I think, winning. They almost made the playoffs. They fumbled the bag at the end of the year to make the playoffs, if I remember correctly. So they won, like, I don't know, 7 or 8 games, I want to say. Again, doing things off the top of my head that I shouldn't do. But that's the team that I look at. Everybody wants to be the Texans last year.
Right.
That's probably a little lofty.
That's the apex.
But Detroit a few years ago now built it totally different, right? They traded for their quarterback and all that kind of stuff. But Detroit a few years ago, they were on the up. They finished the season on a high. They just barely missed out on the playoffs. And then they came back last year and were one of the best teams in football.
Right.
Wire to wire.
Again, just be better at the end than you are at the beginning. That goes for Drake Maye. That goes for the team as a whole.
Yeah, I thought that Gerard Mayo, and I want to look up this Detroit thing because it's
as you look it up, even going back to 21, a lot of people, and I was not in this group, and people have taken a victory lap on this, recognizing what the fall off at the end of the 2021 season was.
Yeah.
You had what looked like a successful season with a rookie quarterback, and it turned out to be a little fool's gold.
So they won 9 games. Detroit did in 2022. Didn't make the playoffs though. And then,
they lost to they played the Packers in the Sunday night game, but something else happened earlier in the day. It was supposed to be for the playoffs.
And they knocked the Packers out.
And then it wasn't. Yeah, and they not. Yeah.
And then in 2023, of course, last year they go 12-5, make it to the NFC Championship game. So that's definitely another path. But in terms of successful season, I agree with you that it's not necessarily on wins and losses, and it's probably something that we're gonna see and feel more than it's going to be tangible of they won 8 games, they won 9 games. But I thought Gerard Mayo had a great answer to the question about this exact question on Tuesday of what is a successful season when he said that we've laid a foundation. That this year is all about laying a foundation, just like that Detroit team did in 2022 where they won 9 games. That was they knew that they had built a foundation, that they were going in an upward trajectory. I hope that the Patriots are doing the same thing. It might not be as fruitful. Like, they might not get to 9 wins. Maybe it's only 4 or 5 wins. But you want to come off the year feeling like they're building towards something in a positive way. And that really does start with the quarterback. So we got to... We're now 45 minutes in without talking about the quarterbacks in detail. So now we can get to the quarterbacks. But before we do, has your work from home space turned into an everything from home space? Find furniture that fits your life, your budget, and your living space thanks to Bob's Discount Furniture. Shop tons of on-trend, small space-friendly styles like Bob's Do-It-All dining sets, smart storage, and small footprint sectionals that can take you all the way from midday meeting to happy hour in no time. So stop in on your local store and multitask stylishly with Bob's Discount Furniture, the official furniture store of the New England Patriots. Quarterbacks. So a little bit of a development today with Joe Milton, your boy. How do you feel about that, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, so
bazooka.
I'm not going to get too much.
He doesn't like bazooka, so I need a different.
No, name. We came up with it the other week. What was it?
The Manhattan Project?
The Manhattan Project. That's right, because you thought he was going to be a secret.
The Manhattan Project.
They weren't going to let him throw in front of people.
The Manhattan Project is moving up the depth chart.
So, I don't think he is. I'll tell you what I think today was.
You think they're going to rotate?
Yeah. I think that's how they're going to maximize the reps for Jacoby Brissett and Drake Maye is that third spot. One day it will be a Zappy day. One day it will be a Milton day. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we come out tomorrow, it's Joe Milton again. But if I'm, as much as I see Joe Milton throw the ball more, and he was humming it today. I thought
too much on some of those.
Yeah, he had one to Quan Baker that he took Quan Baker's fingers off.
Yeah,
it went down in the books as a drop. But wow, I think that's how they're going to split the rep. Because I've said this, you still want to rep Joe Milton. I understand the priorities are Drake Maye's development and getting Jacoby Brissett ready for the season, and those should be the priorities. Those should be the heavy priorities. But you can't just you invested, it's a 6th-round pick, but you invested something in Joe Milton. You can't just let him sit there and do nothing. And for what it's worth, you have other guys that are, in their equivalent spot in the depth chart that you want to rep, and maybe you don't want your top quarterbacks throwing to those guys. There'd be reasons for that. So you do need a third quarterback. You do need somebody in that role, but rather than going third then fourth, it maximizes the opportunities for Maye and Brissett to just alternate Zappy and Milton each day.
I would like to see a little bit more touch on some of those underneath throws from Joe Milton.
He did have one good touch throw, but
I don't know if it exists.
No, he did have one today.
No, I know, but I don't know if it consistently is there.
He needs to do it more. Yeah,
he needs to do it more. But with that being said, and he hasn't necessarily uncorked the deep ball yet. We haven't seen one of those 65 yards in the air type throws. But he did have a throw today. It was a bootleg, and we'll get to some of the disasters on some of these bootlegs, but he bootlegged and there was a defender right in his face and he just kind of flicked the ball out to the sideline. I think it was to one of the tight ends, maybe it was Michael Petaway or Jaheim Bell. And it was effortless. It should not look that easy, right?
Right.
On a line, feet not set, dude in your face, just kind of drop the arm angle and just flick the wrist and the ball just jumps out there. It shouldn't look that easy. It does for Joe Milton. Let's start with Jacoby Brissett, though, or let's continue.
No, we started too late. We started with Joe Milton. You made that decision.
I know. With Jacoby Brissett, I said earlier on PU, and I'm getting some flack for it. You know me. Sometimes I say things a little bit too strong that I don't actually mean to come out as strong as I said it. I said that nobody cares about Jacoby Brissett. And again, I promise you, none of the things I say on here are personal to the player, to the person. But frankly, we're out here watching these practices to evaluate Drake Maye and evaluate the entire thing in the prism of Drake Maye being the future and potentially maybe the present sooner rather than later. So, yes, Jacoby Brissett has a role on this team. He has an important role as both a potential bridge quarterback and as a mentor. But with these practices, more than anything, this is about Drake Maye because we don't know come September when we might see Drake Maye next.
Right.
This is our chance to actually evaluate Drake Maye and see Drake Maye in a large exposure. We might get into week 1 of the regular season and we might not see him for another 2 months. And we don't get to watch practice like we watch practice in training camp. Once the regular season comes around, we have that, maybe 10 minutes. Maybe Gerard will be a little bit more generous with our in-season practice time, but we're not going to see team drills during practice, right? So this is our opportunity to soak in all the Drake Maye as we possibly can. What have been your impressions? With that being said, what have been your impressions so far of what you've seen from Jacoby Brissett?
So, I mean, just steady, just kind of what I expected. There's some plays he's made that he had, a good off-platform throw the other day, but when the pressure's turned up, it's been a bit more of a struggle for him, and that's kind of what he is. That's kind of what he's been. Not a ton of surprises from him. I think you're more or less getting what you expected.
Yeah, that's how I feel too, and part of me feels as though it feels a little, not, I think underwhelmed is the wrong word, but just meh about it, because there's nothing really exciting about the offense with Jacoby Brissett. And maybe it's more just like the allure of the unknown with Drake Maye, and it's the whole mystery box thing, right? There could be more upside. There will be more upside there with the Drake Maye box. But with Jacoby Brissett, yes, there are times probably pretty more frequently than Drake Maye that things are on time and the offense probably runs smoother and he's in and out of the huddle probably a little bit smoother at this stage, and the throws are more on time and all that kind of stuff, but it just lacks any sort of danger or like explosion or like a playmaking ability. Like his best throw so far is probably on that throw up the seam to Austin Hooper yesterday, a little stick nod route, sit down and then break it up the seam. He made a nice throw, fit it between a couple defenders.
Right.
He's hit some underneath stuff that's been on time and in rhythm and all that kind of stuff. Like those are the types of things that you want and you see, and the coaches probably value that more than we do because they know that this is what it's supposed to look like, right? Like this is the in rhythm offense. This is the scripted offense. Whereas with Drake Maye, there's just always this appeal of he could just do something like anything that you're not expecting. Like he could throw a 50-yard bomb down the sideline to Jalen Reagor. Like that could just come out of nowhere. I'm not expecting that to come out of nowhere at any time with Jacoby Brissett. So for lack of a better word, because it's not coming to mind right now, meh. Like it's kind of boring. Like,
I said steady, but in a good way.
Boring.
It's boring in a good way because it's what you want. You want a guy that's just going to get you to Drake Maye. And I think another thing is we've heard a lot of players talk about what a resource Jacoby Brissett has been to help them learn Alex Van Pelt's offense. So in that sense, I mean, I think you're getting what you wanted out of him. And
he's doing his job. There's
right.
No doubt about
the
that.
plan was never for him to come in and win an MVP. If he does, it'd be great. But the plan was never for him to come in and win MVP. The plan was for him to come in and keep the seat warm and help everybody help Drake Maye, but he also get adjusted to this new offense and just simply having a new quarterback. And so far, I'd say that's what he's done.
Yeah, I agree. Again, there's something to be said for all the things that you're saying, of course, and then there's something to be said for the offense probably running more on script or on time, comparatively speaking, to some of the other quarterbacks.
Yeah.
There's more of those plays that I feel like when they hit it, I'm like, okay, like that's how it should look on a Sunday.
Right.
He made a throw to today to Tyquan Thornton, for example. His play action, 5-step play action drop, and he comes off it at the top. He kind of went up in the pocket, like he stepped through the pocket because there's a little bit of pressure coming off the edge there.
Yeah.
Steps through the pocket, back, gets back into the phase, throws the football. Tyquan Thornton comes out of his break balls right there, and you're like, okay, that's a Sunday throw. Like that's a Sunday play.
Right.
And those types of plays are encouraging from Jacoby Brissett. It already feels like they're swimming upstream because of other avenues of the offense, like the receivers, the offensive line. It feels like the passing game sometimes is fighting it as it is to make yards, and when the quarterback is really more just managing the situation more than anything, that also just kind of gets what we got today, which is just a lack of big play flash. Like there's just no flash
right
to it. There's also something to be said with Jacoby Brissett. I would say, as we go through this offensive line situation, which we'll get to in a second, that it hasn't been good. And if it's going to be like this, then all those people that were calling in and, the conversations that we've had over the last couple months about do they need to sit Drake Maye just because of the offensive line play? If this is how the offensive line is going to look in pads, then the answer to that question might be yes. Everyone might have been right about that, right? That we need to wait a little bit. Let's get to the main event, though. Let's talk a little bit about Drake Maye. I think the biggest thing that I've seen with Drake Maye that's so encouraging, or just catches the eye, the ball absolutely jumps out of his hand. There's no question about that. He's got easy cheese. Like he's got easy velocity with the football. I thought today was on perfect display because yesterday he had the downfield throw to Reagor, and it might have been a tiny bit overthrown, but it's a catchable ball because he got it. It was one-handed catch. Great. The catch was better than the throw, but it was still an example of that arm talent that you see. But to me, it's not even necessarily the deep ball. Today, he made a throw on an in-cut to Jalen Polk towards the end of practice, where it looked a little bit like an RPO to me. It was some sort of play action.
We were talking
RPO.
about that, trying to figure out if that's maybe what it was.
I thought it was an RPO because he kind of delayed it. Like he held the mesh point a little bit longer than a regular play action pass would look. And he takes out the football. He keeps the ball. And it's just a sleight of hand of just being able to then transition into throw. He doesn't have to step into it. He doesn't need to actually, climb the pocket or anything like that. And it's just boom, like on a line in between a couple of guys to Jalen Polk. Those drive throws, those middle of the field drive throws, that's a breath of fresh air, man. Like, they haven't had a quarterback that's been able to do that since Brady. Like, they could actually drive the football through the middle of the field and throw the ball into some traffic, but have it really be not a danger ball, like have it actually be a good throw, but a good decision by the quarterback. Those drive throws are super encouraging to me because that is exactly what you weren't able to access with Mac Jones, was 10 plus yards down the middle of the field. Like, Mac never really was able to master that to me. And Drake Maye has been able to do that already. He made the throw yesterday to Juju on the bootleg, where he comes off the bootleg. Juju's crossing from left to right, and off platform, in the air, kind of on the move, just makes another throw on the line to Juju with just easy velo on the ball. Those are the types of throws that I look at and I'm like, in terms of arm talent, athleticism, and ability, he's checking all the boxes of a number 3 overall pick. Like, we are not going to be asking ourselves, does he just not have it physically to cut it in the NFL? He's got that in droves. Now it's just about him catching up mentally. Like, is he going to be able to get them in and out of bad plays at the line of scrimmage? Is he going through his progressions properly? Those types of things are going to be the bigger questions for this coaching staff, because the guy throws a pretty ball. Like, he throws a pretty ball and he's got some heat on it.
So my big takeaway from Drake Maye through the first 2 days, really this was yesterday, is he's here to compete. And some people may hear that and be like, well, yeah, duh, he's a professional. But no, it's so easy for a rookie to come in and just, all right, well, I don't want to screw up. I'm going to take what's there. I'm going to take what's safe. I don't want to mess up. I don't want anybody to, think anything is bad, whatever, blah, blah, blah. No, he came out slinging it. Yeah. He came out, he's testing tight windows. He's testing deep parts of the field, and that comes with mixed results. And you want to clean that up, but part of the reason it's good he's doing that is, all right, he's going to figure out here in camp, okay, this works. This doesn't. If I want to do this, I have to do it this way, or this needs to be done, quickly or whatever. Like, he came out aggressive. He came out with no fear. And that's what you want to see from a rookie quarterback. He does not, in terms of the mentality of it, he does not look like a rookie. Now, like I said, there's some within that you have to clean up, but I would rather he make those mistakes now and learn now and test things now. And then when he gets to week 1, he has all that information versus he's playing it very safe. And then suddenly week 1, there's 2 minutes to go. They need to go 80 yards for a touchdown. Well, I can't take the checkdowns now. What do I do? Right. So when we talked off the top of the show about the approach means more to me than the results at this point in camp. That's what I'm talking about. You hope he irons out and figures out exactly where his limitations lie in terms of testing certain windows and certain parts of the field.
He has a ton of confidence.
He does, and I
don't want that confidence to go away. Like, that's the thing is,
you have to hone it. You have to hone it and learn from it and be realistic. But where I like his confidence is he's not afraid. If I throw a pick, it's all over.
Right.
Jacoby's going to be the starter. Oh, yeah, right. He's not afraid to throw a pick in this setting. Now, I hope when he gets to the game, he doesn't have quite that same approach, and he kind of learns, all right, this is what worked, this is what didn't, but he's fine experimenting in practice because he knows, okay, this is the only way I'm going to be able to figure these things out.
So maybe we're arguing semantics, and I'm not really even arguing with you, but the film nerds, the Twitter film coaches, whatever you want to call us, what we would call what you're describing is arm arrogance. And if I'm the Patriots, and if I'm Gerard Mayo and I'm Elliot Wolf and all the Patriots brass, the last thing that I want to do is coach arm arrogance out of Drake Maye. I would so much rather him continuing to be arrogant AF. Rip it, grip it and rip it, baby. Like, don't hold him back, because there are going to be mistakes, right? And maybe he turns the ball over and maybe he makes a bad throw here or there. But there are quarterbacks on the flip side that have that type of arm arrogance, that are just have that, like, I'm going to fit this ball into any type of window, that for the most part, it kind of works. Like they kind of get away with it.
Well, but that's the thing. But I think the guys that really do that at an elite level know what they can and can't get away with.
Maybe to an extent. You'd have to ask them. Like, I don't know where the line is necessarily, but I look at quarterbacks, and I know you're going to tell me that he stinks, but like Josh Allen, Jordan Love, Herbert, those types of guys that have this kind of arm talent, I'm not going to put Mahomes in the conversation because it's a different stratosphere, but those three guys are the guys that come to mind when I think about Drake Maye, just from a skill set standpoint and from a tool standpoint. And all three of those guys still don't lose that. Like they have all the confidence in the world that they can hit any blade of grass. And I would just rather roll with that. Like, so, okay, maybe he does have some Josh Allen turnover issues early on in his career. So be it. Like, he'll learn from it, and he'll get better.
But that's my
with it.
point. Learn from it. Because there are some guys that don't. There are some guys that can. And this goes to something Gerard Mayo talked about yesterday, which I thought was great, because this was always a big Bill Belichick tenet. And one of the things that maybe didn't get talked about as much as you'd hope. You can make a mistake. Guys are going to make mistakes in camp. It's going to happen. Don't make the same mistake twice.
Yeah.
Make the mistake, learn from it, apply it. And that's basically what I'm saying. Like,
you can't put...
Don't keep trying to test the same throw that's clearly not there.
Fair enough. But you can't put training wheels on the gunslinger. Like, don't take the gunslinger out of him. Because then what ends up happening is you end up getting... And granted, the physical tools weren't there for Mac, but like you end up getting something like Mac's rookie season, which... for the most part, we know now was kind of an aberration.
But I guess what I'm saying is, like, yeah, but I don't know. We disagree on this. I don't think it's a good thing for quarterbacks to throw interceptions. You don't care, but
it's a give and take though, because no, it's inherently it's not good for quarterbacks to throw interceptions, but at the same time, if the quarterback is also just not being aggressive and testing windows down the field, then you're not going to be a productive offense either.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is he's doing it in practice, and I like that, and I'm sure he'll do it in the game, but coming from the ACC, playing a bunch of weak defenses where he could pretty much do whatever he wanted, he's got to relearn. There are limitations, and you can test those limitations, but he's got to learn limitations, and I like that he's doing that because it would be easy for them to put the training wheels on in practice. And he clearly feels he has the freedom to experiment and do what he needs to do. It's just none of that matters if you continue to be overly wild in the games, I guess is my point.
Fair enough. And I also just feel like this was something that they did with Mac that in hindsight, because all we can do now, and I know it's easy for us to sit here in hindsight and wag our fingers, but all we can do now is learn from the Mac Jones experience and what went wrong with his development. And there's a million things that it contributed. But one of the things that I feel like they can learn from with Mac Jones is that you can't completely coddle a guy. And I feel like his rookie season, they had him so buttoned up that...
Yeah, that's clearly not the case here.
That you can't coddle him, right? Like, I hope that when they put Drake Maye, whether it's week 8, week 9, week 15, I don't care. I hope when Drake Maye finally takes over that they just kind of let him loose. And if he throws 3 picks in a game and they lose because he's a little bit too arrogant, then that's when you coach him to rein it back in. But don't go into games. Remember with Mac his rookie year, he didn't throw a ball into the end zone for like the first month.
Yeah.
Like, don't go into games like that. Like, let him play through it. Like, let him make mistakes. Let him learn on the fly. I hope they do that differently.
Well, I guess, so to bring it all together, they're doing that in camp.
Yeah.
Because even in camp that year, it felt like Mac was relatively controlled. This feels like they told Drake Maye,
be Drake Maye.
Make the throws you want to make, right? And we'll react to them after. If they're good, great. If not, we'll tell you they're not. We'll tell you to stop making them. Or we'll tell you, no, do it differently, right? Throw this ball in this spot and put it on the back shoulder instead of the front shoulder, however they want to qualify it. It does feel like they're giving him the freedom, and this is what I like. They're giving him the freedom to test things, and he's taking that freedom and making the most of it.
I've also been pretty impressed with Drake Maye's. I thought that we would have more of those like WTF throws than we've had. And not necessarily turnovers, but just throwing balls 10 yards over guys' heads and stuff, like some of the stuff that we saw on tape with him at North
Or
Carolina.
even in the spring.
Where he would just like totally lose the ball, right? Like
Yeah.
he would just lose control of the football. He had one throw over the middle today to Jaheim Bell that was off. And he had one yesterday that it felt like he got pressured in his lap and kind of threw a dirt ball over the middle to Kayshon Boutte. But for the most part, he's been generally accurate, which I think is encouraging, because I thought that we were going to see some, like, remember, I keep going back to Josh Allen, but remember Josh Allen's rookie year when he would just throw the ball like 10 yards over dudes' heads on the sideline?
That, but yeah.
It was like, it like land in like the first row, and I'm not exaggerating. Zach Wilson used to do it all the time too. And you're just like, what the heck was that? Like,
Right.
where is that going? I haven't really said that to myself too often with him.
That's one where, let's see when the pads come on, he's facing a live rush,
Maybe it'd be sped up a little bit more.
Yeah, that's, again, I'm more interested in this point in the approach, not so much the results.
Yeah.
And that's not to protect him to say he's bad. If anything, I'm probably taking something away from him because he's been good. But I just like the approach. I just like that he's been fearless.
Oh, yeah. He
But-
sees that single high safety, and he's hunting. Like, he's not...
That's me playing Madden.
You put that single high safety over the top of Drake Maye, and you better cover the receivers well because he's going
But-
down the field.
Now do that when there's a 280-pound pass rusher in your face.
Yeah.
I guess is my point. But he hasn't been afraid so far. So far, so good.
Last thing on the quarterbacks really quickly. This whole thing to me still is annoying. It's still a charade to me. Like, I just can't envision a world where we're at right now with Drake Maye, to me, is he's on a climb up the mental mountain, right?
Yeah.
Like, can he call plays in a huddle? Can he go through progressions? Can he audible? Can he get again? Like, can he be at a high enough mental level that he can function without it being a disservice to him to put him out there? I can't envision a scenario where they have 11 more training camp practices that are open to the public. There'll be a couple more that will be just for the media. Then they'll have 3 preseason games. We have about 6 weeks to go in this process. And I just can't imagine that in 6 weeks from now, he's not going to be at a baseline level to be able to call a play in a huddle or go through an NFL progression. I just don't understand what we're doing here with talking about it any differently than the door being wide the heck open for him to take this job week 1, because we can all sit there and watch it through 2 days and through the spring and all that and say, it's not going to be physical. Like, it's not going to be arm talent. It's not going to be any of those types of things. This is clearly about whether or not Alex Van Pelt feels like he has a mastery of the offense that's at a good enough level to play in an NFL game, or it's about all of the other stuff we've been talking about, the offensive line,
Right.
the receivers, whatever. But for Drake Maye, just in a vacuum, I don't see any reason why he can't be the week 1 starter, because I feel like mentally he'll get there in the next 6 weeks. Like, they have so much time between now and the regular season to get him mentally ready. I find it so hard to believe that he won't be. And so therefore, if we get to the point where Cincinnati's around the corner, we're really talking about it being other stuff, like other things, because
Right.
it's not
So-
going to be him.
Your whole point is, outside of the reasons he wouldn't start, I can't see why he wouldn't start.
Basically, I can't
okay.
I can't see why he wouldn't start because of Drake Maye. If you
I
want
get
to
what you're
make
saying. He'll be ready. Whether or not the situation is ready is another question.
because that's the only point that you could make that I could honestly hear and be like, okay, I accept that as a point. If you're telling me that he's not ready to play an NFL game because we don't feel like he can call a play in a huddle, well, then I would say to you, well, what the heck have you been teaching him for the last 3 months?
Well, let's see what he looks like when he has pass rushers in his face. I think it's a little early to say that. You're not necessarily wrong. I just think it's a little early to be that pounding the table for it.
What do you think is going to change, I guess, so drastically?
I just want to see how he handles pressure before I'm willing to say he's like, if he's on track, he's on track.
Yeah.
I just, like you said off the top of the show, it's 2 practices. They haven't even put pads on yet. We haven't seen real football. Let's see that before we go exclaiming, because that was a bit of an exclamation. right? I said before my take wasn't a take, it was a theory. That wasn't a take. That was a proclamation from Evan Lazar.
Yes. My proclamation is that Drake Maye should be this team's week 1 starter. I'll say it now.
Can I watch him in a fully padded practice?
You can watch him in a fully padded practice, but just to be fair, I would have told you on draft night that he should be the week 1 starter.
I remember we were out there in the spring. He threw a pick, and you said, nope, he's still a week 1 starter.
He's the best quarterback on the team. So what are we doing? Like, are we not going to play the best players, or are we going to play the best player?
That's where even if that does end up being the case with him, there are the other factors, because we can get to the offensive line, Evan. I don't feel great.
Neither do
putting
I.
my 3rd overall pick investment behind what we saw today.
He's the best quarterback on the team. I would have told you that on April 26th.
So then let's not get him killed.
Okay, so along those lines, let's talk about the offensive line. Offensive line play in general, line play, either side. Sitting here and evaluating it in non-padded practices, I'll make the comparison again. I think I made it in the spring. It's a lot. What they're doing at this point is like playing defense in basketball. They're just trying to slide their feet, and maybe there's like a little bit of hand checking, but we're really not hand checking, and we're just trying to keep ourselves in between the pass rusher and the quarterback. That scenario that I just spelled out for you, 10 times out of 10 is going to favor the pass rusher. It just is.
Yeah.
And when you also add in the pass rusher is Matthew Judon, Josh Uche, who's a guy that has double-digit sack season in his NFL career, Christian Barmore yesterday. Like these guys are good pass rushers on top of that. So I don't want to evaluate the line necessarily because I don't want to get too in the weeds of shorts and a T-shirt and offensive lineman blocking. But with that being said, what I'm seeing out there with the offensive line right now, and why I'm still not hitting the panic button just yet, is because a lot of it to me seems assignment and like execution based in terms of, there's a pressure today where they tried to bootleg and Matthew Judon just didn't bite on the bootleg. Now, Matthew Judon's a really good player. Maybe he sees it from a mile away and he doesn't bite on the bootleg against anybody. But there's really no threat of the run game right now because they're not in pads, so they're not running the football. They haven't set it up. They're not sequencing plays together, right? So in a lot of ways, it just feels like it's predictable. And Matthew Judon stays home and he's right in the quarterback's face, and that's that. And on the one hand, you might look at that and you're like, oh, God, here we go, right? The offensive line's a mess. There's another one, I think it was Dietrich Wise, that came through unblocked. Again, they were trying to move the pocket a little bit, and they just didn't get it fitted up properly. Like they weren't hat on a hat properly with it. And, oh, God, here we go again, right? So I'm willing to be a little bit patient with it, but I can't deny the priors, which were that this was what everybody thought was going to be the issue. And 2 days into camp, today especially, felt like a jailbreak on every other dropback.
And I'm with you. I don't want to necessarily evaluate line play without pads. I think that's short-sighted. But like I've said a few times during the show, let's not look at the results. Let's look at the approach. Yesterday, it was Calvin Anderson, Caden Wallace at right tackle. Today, it was Caden Wallace and Vidarian Lowe. We've seen Calvin Anderson play both sides. Chuks Okorafor still on the left side. I will, Evan, if you'll allow me for a second, because I'm curious if you saw this, evaluate one performance-based thing. Okorafor still looks a little uncomfortable getting back into a set at left tackle.
I'm sure he is.
Doesn't entirely look like he is. Like, once he gets back, it looks normal, but there's like a period there where his weight doesn't look balanced, right? If that makes sense.
He's got a little hitch.
Not even that. It's just I don't know if the feet are tied to the upper body, right?
Right.
He's
There's
like
a little
leaning
stall.
and
There's a stall. Now, to be fair, he's kind of an unorthodox pass blocker as it is, and he's one of those guys on film, even on the right side, that it doesn't always look pretty, but he somehow
and
makes
he's
it work.
still learning it. Like, you can look off balance the first day at camp all you want, as long as you get it figured out by week 1. So, but to get back to the point of the approach. So we've seen 3 different right tackles. Mike Onwenu still hasn't kicked outside.
Yep.
We've seen Calvin Anderson getting ready to play both spots. Mike Onwenu told us yesterday, he was asked about playing right guard, and he said, I'm happy to do whatever, but we're going to be doing different groupings throughout camp. Chuks Okorafor says today there's going to be new offensive lines every day. That's where I'm worried.
Yeah.
Because we talk a lot about, Evan, the seeing it through the same eyes. That's the Dante Scarnecchiism, right? One of those. 5 guys that see it through the same eyes, that are on the same page and know where everybody is, and it helps them, and especially in zone blocking. That's massive.
Yeah.
See it through the same eyes. How are you going to build that chemistry? And I don't think they mean, all 20 days of camp will be 20 different groups, but I think the plan is probably for the first week or two, try a bunch of different groups and see what sticks.
Yeah.
And that's, you hope in that early time you find one. Maybe you then narrow it down to 2 or 3 and then they rotate. But it's going to make it real. And the one thing they do seem to have figured out, and we'll see, maybe tomorrow Mike Onwenu's at right tackle, I don't know. They seem to be sticking with 4 guys. And Okorafor remains a question in terms of can he actually play on the left side, but he'll be there.
I feel as though we are at the point with Okorafor where I'm almost done saying who's at left tackle because it's Okorafor.
He's going to start the season there. Whether or not it works out and they can stick with him will be a question.
Right,
but
he's the left tackle.
He's the left tackle to start the season. But how are you going to build the chemistry? How are you going to get 5 guys to see it through the same eyes when you're not consistently having the same 5 guys out there? So that's what really concerns me about the offensive line. I said a bunch. They are going to have to find a combination, and obviously finding a combination means it's not going to be the same 5 guys out there every time. This is the spot they've put themselves in, so I don't want to talk out of both sides of my mouth and say too many line combinations, but at the same time say, well, you got to figure out which combination works, but there does need to be a happy medium there, and really once the pads come on, they need to maybe iron it out to 2 or 3 combinations and say, all right, this is our favorite. We're going to ride this as long as we can until it doesn't work. Then we'll go to the next one. But I don't know how long you can do a different combination every day before you're just spinning your tires.
Well, I do feel like the only change from a day-to-day that's going to be major is who's playing right tackle.
So it looks that way through 2 days.
Yeah.
The only reason I wonder about that is Mike Onwenu, when asked about specifically playing right guard, said we're going to have different combinations every day.
Well,
and I just wonder if we haven't seen the Mike Onwenu right tackle combination yet.
So my whole thing, just to scratch an itch, because it drives me nuts.
You hate this.
I hate the fact that I feel lied to by the organization.
Is this about Caden Wallace?
This is about Mike Onwenu.
Oh, all right.
I feel lied to because when they drafted, it was right around the draft. It might have been his pre-draft press conference that they do every year with Elliot Wolf. He said somewhere, it might have been the Adam Schefter podcast. I'm sorry, I'm rambling.
Are you talking about when he said Onwenu was going to be the right tackle?
He said somewhere that they signed the best right tackle available in free agency.
I think no, because the combine was before free agency. That was He was talking about Onwenu's contract. That might have been a pre-draft thing.
He said that they had signed the best right tackle on the market. That they believe that they signed the best right tackle on the market.
He wasn't wrong if they're playing him at right tackle.
They then get to the spring, and Mike Onwenu stood at the podium. I wrote the story, so I remember the headline. Mike Onwenu preparing to start the season at right tackle.
Said that was the plan. And there was a report, I think Rap Sheet or somebody reported that the plan was for him to play right tackle. Like he signed to play right tackle.
We get to the first freaking day of training camp. Day 1 of training camp. And what we've all been saying, and I'm not doing this to pat myself on the back, I'm just telling you that it was the obvious thing. If we knew it, it was obvious. We had all been saying, this doesn't feel great. I don't feel great about this. Mike Onwenu is more of a guard than he is a tackle. He's built like a guard. He's not a tackle. The first freaking day of training camp, he's back at guard, and he's been at guard 2 days in a row now, and he ended the spring at guard. So you didn't sign the best right tackle in free agency. You signed the best guard in free agency. And it's not about the money because he's still compensated okay at guard.
He's the second highest paid guard or the 4th highest paid right tackle in football.
It's not bad. The money's not bad.
He's top 5 at his position, whatever his position is.
And he's damn good. So it's not bad money, and it will keep on. The next guy will top him. The next guy will top that. The belly in Denver has already gotten more money than Mike Onwenu did. Okay, so it's not about the contract. I don't care about the contract. What I care about is getting an offensive line that's functional. And if they had approached it through the prism of we need to replace both tackles, because they went into the draft thinking they needed just a left tackle because Mike Onwenu was going to be their right tackle, and it never felt right to me. It never passed the sniff test that he was going to be a full-time right tackle. Then he also came into the spring and into the summer, still looks the same, didn't slim down at all, didn't get ready to play tackle at all. He's going to play guard. They're going to put him at guard, and they're going to have a giant gaping hole at right tackle and a huge question mark on Chukwuekorfor at left tackle. Now, the one thing that I'm holding out hope for is that by the end of the summer, maybe Caden Wallace jumps Calvin Anderson and Vidarian Lowe, and they have something in Caden Wallace to be the starting right tackle. Like maybe they hit on that pick.
Right.
And now he's the starting right tackle.
That's realistic. I like and I know I kind of complained about the plan to play Wallace at left tackle, but I like him as a right tackle. It was a solid pick if the plan's to play him right tackle. By the way, I found the tweet. This was Ian Rappaport a couple days after the Onwenu contract became official. I actually quoted the team tweet of Onwenu signing the contract. It said, "Note on Mike Onwenu, who signed a 3-year, $57 million deal during free agency. He's expected to be the Patriots starting right tackle moving forward, sources say. The plan is for the extremely versatile player to finally settle in on the right side." He is settling in on the right side.
Oh, he's settling in on the right side, all right. I don't care where he plays.
No, you were on top of this.
I don't care where he plays. And I don't care about the money. Just don't lie to me.
You say, okay.
Drives me nuts. Just be honest. He's a guard. Be honest about it.
Do you think they lied to you, or do you think they truly believed he was going to play tackle until they got out there in the spring and saw what their guard situation was?
I'm even more worried if the fact is that they thought he was going to hold up at tackle. That makes me even more worried.
But did they move him because of him?
Yes.
Or did they move him because they don't like what they have at guard?
That's crazy. You don't move the better player. The better player plays where he should play.
They've moved the better player before.
Okay, but you shouldn't do that. Okay,
I don't disagree.
You don't see the Dallas Cowboys going into training camp and saying, we don't have a right tackle, so let's move Zach Martin to right tackle. Zach Martin's a left guard. He's going to be a left guard. He's going to go to the Hall of Fame as a left guard.
They've moved the better player before. They've moved the better player before.
Okay, well, that's also dumb. Like,
yes.
Just don't tell me he's a tackle and then get into training camp on day one and have him playing guard. It's silly. It's nonsense.
Well, look, I think this is the plan, but I don't know. There's multiple conversations.
Then now the plan needs to be he's a right guard. So that's where he is.
I'm with you. And then that makes it a lot easier because instead of doing different configurations, essentially all we have is a right tackle battle. If you know Chukwuekorfor is going to start the season at left, growing pains and all of that, well, now it's not necessarily different combinations, and it's just Caden Wallace, Calvin Anderson, Vidarian Lowe. I wouldn't be surprised if they throw Tyrone Wheatley in there at some point. Like, it's just a position battle, a right tackle. And I can live with that. It's not ideal, but
yeah,
you're seriously banking on Chukwuekorfor working out, but I can live with that.
That you have to live with that because the Chukwuekorfor thing is
yes, I understand that.
That's happened. He's the left tackle.
I'm just going to go watch Will Campbell squat more after we do the show.
But it irks me.
I'm not,
as you can tell.
We have to do a show today. Again, we don't know. We don't know by the time. Maybe these are the only couple combinations we're seeing. I'm still not ruling out there's a combination waiting Friday, Monday, whenever, where Mike Onwenu was at right tackle, and they used a 4th-round pick on a guard. They used a 103rd overall pick on a guard. That's a player you would expect to start.
That would concern me. I'd be even more worried if all of a sudden now they'd put Mike Onwenu at right guard in a non-padded practice just to kick him back outside to right tackle. Like that just doesn't make any sense.
But I'm saying not all of a sudden. It's they essentially have it scripted. Day 1, this is the combination. Day 2, this is the combination. Day 3, this is the combination. Day 4,
well, that goes back to your point that that's asking for trouble.
Yeah,
you got to stick with one.
Well, what? They have 5 practices before pads: Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
4.
4.
So
maybe the plan is we're going to try 4 different combinations, and then whichever one we think gives us the best shot, that's who we're putting out there Tuesday for pads.
So my other concern about all of this is that, to your point, because they don't have Cole Strange right now, they don't love their guards.
I don't think not having Cole Strange is exacerbating this issue, by the way.
I think it might be because if they feel like Cole Strange is solid, is good, then when he comes back, he goes back to left guard City goes back to right guard. Onwenu goes back to right tackle.
Too many pieces. At that point, play everybody where they're going to play and just find Cole Strange's backup.
This is my point, though, is like I would not be surprised if we get into, let's say Cole Strange comes back in week 8, and in week 8, now Cole Strange is back, so we're gonna go to this line. And now all of a sudden, halfway through the year, you're changing the line again.
So what I'm saying is if they know that's the plan, right now they should be working with Mike Onwenu at tackle and just, who's going to hold down left guard until Cole Strange comes back? So
that's my
Lane
point.
Robinson,
Like, you can't,
Nick Leverett, Michael Jordan, whoever.
It's a non-padded practice. Just put Nick Leverett in there for just the time being as a placeholder, right? Like that, if that's what the plan was, if that is the plan, that's what they should be doing. But instead, what they're doing is they're putting Mike Onwenu at right guard.
I don't think they know what the plan is. I think the plan for this week is to figure out what the plan is when the pads come on.
Jeez. All right. We knew it's going to be bad. But what I was hoping is coming into camp, there wouldn't be all these musical chairs. I was hoping that we were going to get into camp, and besides maybe right tackle because of Caden Wallace. Like, Caden Wallace is a rookie, and he's going to come along slower than maybe they had a placeholder there for him. Like Calvin Anderson yesterday, when they came out and Calvin Anderson was the right tackle, I said placeholder. Cool. All right, fine. It's the same thing with Jacoby Brissett, right? Like if we have a placeholder, you have a bridge, and then eventually they're going to pass the torch to
make
Caden
the
Wallace.
rookie win the job. That's
perfectly fine with
get that approach at any position.
But now, they're moving pieces around already with Vidarian Lowe playing right tackle, and this is how you get yourself into trouble. Pick a 5. Yeah, it's not going to be great on paper. They're not going to be the 1990 whatever Dallas Cowboys, right? Like they're not going to be awesome on paper, but pick a 5, stick with the 5, and let's roll. Like this whole musical chairs act is going to get them into trouble. Now, with that being said, Calvin Anderson, I did want to touch on him briefly. Okay. Had a good chat with him. First of all, like I just kind of hope that he makes it because he's a super nice dude.
Nice guy's been through a ton.
Yeah, like been through an absolute ton, and he's like just genuinely a good dude from my interactions that I've had with him. I asked him straight up about playing in an outside zone scheme, and you would have thought that I like just gave him a PS5 on Christmas morning, right? Like his face just like lit up. He was like, I love this. Like this is the offense I want to play in. Like this is awesome. Like this is built for me. So I really am cautiously optimistic that he could hold down that spot for the time being until Caden Wallace comes back. It does fit him. He's an athletic guy. You look at it, go back and look at his combine testing numbers. His RAS, his relative athletic score is high. It was like 9 something, I want to say, or maybe it's 8, high 8s, low 9, something around there. He's an athletic dude. He can move. He can move laterally. He's got all the tools to be able to block in this system. So I'm cautiously optimistic that he might be in a much better place this time around.
Right.
And that could maybe hold his water a little bit with the right tackle spot. But I'm with you 100%. Like they have to pick a 5, and I just want to see on Monday be dialed into 5 guys, and I don't want it to change. Like the good teams, the good lines, they have a starting 5, and barring injury, that doesn't all training camp. It's the same 5 dudes.
I mean, be open to changing if it doesn't work. But I get what you're saying. Like pick a group, give them a week, and see what that looks like. And if it works,
Detroit, they're not having this conversation. They know the 5 guys. They've known the 5 guys all offseason.
I think it's the same 5 guys from last year, right?
And there's no question of like, is this guy a guard or a tackle? And is that guy going to play? Is this guy nope?
Well, I mean, now you're talking about a team that's been building its roster for years versus a team that's in year 1 of a rebuild. Like it's different.
No, I'm not saying that the Patriots personnel should be on that level. I'm just saying that I said earlier that I wanted to be Mike Reese, so I just acted like Mike. Be the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions.
Look, I'm fine if they want to have a battle at one position. If you want to battle at right tackle and make Caden Wallace win the job, fine. But just
best right tackle.
Start coming up with some continuity.
Oh God.
I mean, he still probably was. Even if he plays guard, he still probably
all of that,
was.
That whole thing was all bogus. All right, that's all I'm saying. Let's talk a little bit
about
about
that. You deserve credit.
Let's talk about some of the receivers quickly here, and then we will talk some defense. I promise. I know we've been pretty offense heavy per usual.
Non-padded practice.
So first thing I wrote down I wanted to talk about was just Jalen Polk's overall involvement. it hasn't been lighting up practice or anything like that, but he's clearly somebody that they see as an immediate contributor. I think that's safe to say. And he's gotten a ton of targets, and he's caught a few of them. Like, it hasn't been a complete offer. And he's involved heavily. So I feel like they look at Jalen Polk, and there's been some rumblings from inside the building that they're pretty bullish on what they've seen from Jalen Polk. But so far, it seems like he's going to be a guy that's going to be in the mix right away. Yeah,
I wrote yesterday that the big takeaway is he seems to have the early trust of the coaching staff.
Yeah.
Like, they're giving him opportunities, and it's, like you said, he's made the most of, or not made the most of it, but he's made some plays. There's a couple plays maybe he's left on the table. He was on the wrong side of a really good pass breakup from Jonathan Jones today. But
Marcus Jones.
Thank you. But he's out there. He's heavily involved, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. Gerard Mayo, Elliott Wolf talked at the draft about play the kids. That's what we're seeing. Like, he's getting the opportunities to go out there, show what he can do, and improve.
Yeah, he doesn't jump off the practice field at you with like speed or explosiveness or anything like that. But he's very smooth. You can tell that he's efficient with his movements, and he's made some plays underneath the defense that I think have been a little bit more impressive than the downfield targets that haven't been quite as successful. Very first throw, I think, of training camp from Jacoby Brissett on Marcus Jones, just like a little option route in the slot, quick out, made the catch today in front of Christian Gonzalez on the in cut. Those types of plays, I feel like he's going to thrive on more in the pros than maybe he did at Washington. I mean, you watched a ton of that Washington offense, probably more than anybody. Yeah. And you know how that offense was. They didn't run routes in that offense. It's just run to space, and Penix will find you.
And I think you're seeing a good mix of, he has a real knack. This is one of my favorite things about him in the draft. He has a real knack for understanding what the defense is trying to do and getting himself to a spot where the quarterback can make a play.
Yeah. And
he's combined that, you can call it a skill, you can call it an instinct, whatever you want to call it. He's combined that with, he actually is looking pretty comfortable as a route runner, I would say, through a couple of days. So now,
untapped, I think, in college. I think he's going to be a guy in the pros that's going to live at the first and second level.
Yeah.
Whereas in college, because of the offense he played in, they were a down the field offense.
He's going to be a second level guy. We talked about him leading into the draft as kind of a more explosive Jacoby Myers. Yeah. And that's exactly what we've gotten through 2 days and going back to the spring.
Yeah, the hope here is that some of these 50-50 balls that he's been targeted on down the field, once the quarterbacks have like a better feel for his pacing and like where he likes the ball,
right,
then maybe those things will be completed more often. Does he like it coming over his shoulder? Does he like to high point it? Does he like to back shoulder it? Like, those are the types of things that you talk about with the quarterbacks, and then eventually 2 weeks from now, they're putting the ball in the right place, and now he's making plays on those balls that were falling incomplete earlier on in training camp. I'm optimistic that can turn. Like, he's never going to be a guy that's going to run by anybody, but if he can just have that threat of being able to go down the field a little bit and then win maybe in some contested situations every once in a while, it'll open up that second level for him even more. But I've been optimistic about what I've seen. I still think that the Jacoby Myers, Tyler Boyd, like that type of player is we were right on it, like with those comps. Like, I feel that's how I feel when I watch him still. We haven't seen a ton of Javon Baker quite yet. He's participating, but I think with the thumb injury in the spring, he's maybe a step behind Polk just from a learning standpoint at this point. So we'll probably have more to say, I would say, on Javon Baker in a couple weeks. Like, I feel like he'll catch up and he'll be good. He still looks like some of the things we said in the spring, but I don't want to overreact too much to some of that.
The one thing with him, like, he had a thumb injury, right? So he doesn't look like he's having any issues catching the football.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, can we talk about Tyquan now? Can we do it?
Yeah, let's do. Well, I think we got to talk about Tyquan and Jalen Reagor together.
That's exactly how I wrote it down. Tyquan versus Jalen Reagor is the battle we didn't know we needed, but now it's amazing.
But it's not. Are you ready to talk about Maurice Harris? Because we're going to talk about Maurice Harris.
So here's the thing. There is a giant role on this team, a gaping hole in this offense for somebody that can add some vertical speed to this team. If they are coming out in whatever personnel grouping, it doesn't matter. If they're coming out on the field and it's like Jalen Polk and Pop Douglas and Hunter Henry and like, Osborne or Juju or whoever ends up being the third guy. Yeah, Pop is explosive, but he's not a deep threat, right? And they're going to be an offense that's still going to be operating in a phone booth if they have nobody that can run out by anybody on the outside. The only two guys on the roster, unless Javon Baker starts to really come on here, and it's different with Baker, like he's not a burner. He's not a 4-3 guy. It's just he wins vertically differently, but maybe he can be the vertical X. It's the vertical X receiver. Yeah. And Jalen Reagor and Tyquan Thornton are in a battle royale for making this roster in that spot. We've both been a little bit more on the Reagor train just because of the return ability, which I do think is a factor in this. But in general, Reagor day on day one, kind of a Tyquan day today. I want to put in the context with Tyquan, though. A lot of it was like underneath stuff. Like
most of it was in 7-on-7.
Yeah, and it wasn't a whole lot down the field like Reagor's catch on day one.
Well, I would say in Tyquan's defense, before I kind of diminish both what he and Reagor did, in Tyquan's defense,
they both stink. No, just kidding.
You like seeing him catch the ball underneath because that was what he couldn't do. We knew he could run a go route, but can you get yourself open underneath and catch the ball? And can you get yourself open in the middle of the field and catch the ball? And he did that today. That all being said, a couple things. One, with Tyquan, it's about staying healthy as much as anything else.
Yeah.
Get through camp. He's opened his first 2 NFL seasons on IR. Get through camp, and that you can't win the competition if you can't do that. Second of all, we've seen the 7 where the pads aren't on yet, and the fast guys are just running by everybody.
Want to draft fast guys? Draft fast guys.
Right. But you don't even have to draft them. Again, to go back to Maurice Harris, we both thought it was our first year covering the team. They had the second coming of Randy Moss. Turns out some players are better when you can't touch them. So to my point about Tyquan Thornton running the underneath stuff, yeah, it's encouraging to see, but also I want to see him do it when they can jam him at the line of scrimmage. Can he get off a jam? Things like that. Yeah. And the same goes for Jalen Reagor. Can he make catches when the receiver's going to be more physical than him? Can he run by guys when you're able to get a little more handsy and you can kind of bump and run down the field? So,
and no offense, but maybe it's not Azizi Hearn that's the guy in coverage, and maybe it's Christian Gonzalez.
No, he beat the deep balls by Marcus Jones, I think, yesterday, right?
No, that was Azizi Hearn.
The first one.
Yeah.
They weren't both as easy. Were they both as easy, Hearn?
Yes.
Okay. Well, again, at the very least, let Azizi Hearn play physically because he's a physical corner.
Yeah.
So
no, I'm not trying to pick on Azizi Hearn.
No, I know. I just have trouble. It is what it is. And they had good days, and they deserve credit for having good days. And having good days at this point is better than not having good days at this point. So it's laying the foundation. But we've done this long enough, Evan, that we've seen speed guys pop in the first week, and then the pads come on, and we forget about them within a day. So I do think one of them is going to make the team. I still go Reagor. It doesn't. I was saying this yesterday when everybody's like, "Oh, you were saying Reagor, and he had this great day. Look at that." No, I still think Jalen Reagor is going to make the team. It has nothing to do with what happened yesterday. It's because at the end of the day, one of the guys can play special teams, and the other one can't.
He's also just been better in games,
and he's been a better player in the past. That too, but
yeah,
I'm not going to get hyped about either of them as receivers until the pads come on. Like they had good days. Give them credit for it. They deserve it. But I'm not ready to make any sweeping proclamation about either of them before the pads come on.
Fair points. The one encouraging thing has nothing to do with either one of those guys, but they do have a quarterback, especially with Drake Maye. But I also think Jacoby Brissett has a much bigger arm than Mac Jones or Bailey Zappi. So they have these quarterbacks now that if Tyquan Thornton gets behind the defense 50 yards down the field, they have a quarterback that can actually throw it 50 yards down the field. So when I watch Thornton, I watch Reagor. Do I think either one of those guys is all of a sudden going to become, a 1,500-yard receiver? No, of course not. But they have a quarterback now that's going to be able to actually get the ball down the field, and that makes their speed a little bit more threatening.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and the guy I keep coming back to with both of them, but especially with Tyquan, is Tez Walker. Like, I just feel like Drake Maye was able to do it with Tez Walker. They're very similar players to me in terms of their skill set. I think Tez Walker might be a little heavier, but in general,
he's bigger.
Yeah, they're similar guys, and that's the type of receiver that Drake Maye on the outside likes to throw to. He likes to throw to a guy that can win deep. I think Javon Baker is going to eventually be that dude that's going to be the guy that he's going to feature mostly going deep. But that speed X receiver is a guy that they need. Not only are they going to, in my opinion, need it vertically, but I think there's also a horizontal element of it too. They're going to need somebody that's going to be a threat on jet motion and different types of motions and things like that. Maybe that's Pop Douglas, but I think you have to get back to the conversation of managing body blows with Pop Douglas too, and managing his workload to make sure he stays healthy. Rager, Thornton, those guys could be guys that are used as a jet sweep, even if it's just as smoke and mirrors, if they don't actually get the ball, but that type of thing with this type of offense. So I'm with you. I'm not going to get to any grand proclamations. I'm not going to get all hot and bothered by Tyquan Thornton. And today, I've honestly been more hot and bothered by Tyquan in other days than today, because so much of it was like, he's catching like 5-6 yard passes.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to get crazy about that. I was more impressed with him at points in the spring, to be honest, with some of the things that he did down the field. He made that one catch, I remember in the spring, deep ball from Drake Maye. Like, that was the most impressive play he's made so far this offseason still. So I'm with you on that. Let's move over to the defense. We got a few more minutes here to talk about some of this.
I do have one special teams thought too.
I wanted to ask you about that. About special teams in general in a second. But first, I want to start with Marcus Jones.
Yeah.
I feel like he's probably been the highlight so far on the defense. Obviously, you're not going to talk too much about the defensive line and non-padded practices, but a big question coming in to the spring and to the summer, I should say, was whether people thought he was a good football player or not. Miles Bryant played a ton for this team last year, and he's no longer here. So that slot corner role is completely up for grabs. We've talked at times about Alex Austin playing outside and John Jones kicking back inside. So far, I feel like we've seen more Gonzalez and Jones on the outside with Marcus Jones in the slot as like their primary nickel look. And Marcus Jones, to his credit, has been awesome.
It's been good. Great pass breakup on Jalen Polk today. Bigger receiver, and we've seen him. We saw him do it 2 years ago. Contend with those bigger receivers, and he definitely has a knack for that. So he's been good, and him being good unlocks a lot, because we talked about they're better on the boundary than they are in the slot. They have talent in the slot, but maybe not as much depth. If Marcus Jones is a guy you're comfortable putting in that spot the majority of the time, it gives you the freedom to put Jonathan Jones on the boundary. You don't have to maybe put as much on the plate of a guy like Alex Austin or Isaiah Bolden, who's been getting a ton of run in that role as well. And it stretches it out. So good start. Again, smaller player. Let's see when the pads come on. I'm broken record with that, but
maybe it's more
good start for him.
Good start for him. He deserves credit for that. And I would also say that with Marcus Jones and Alex Austin, it feels very matchup based, right? If you are playing a team that has bigger receivers, then maybe that week it's Alex Austin and Gonzalez on the outside with John Jones going back to the middle of the field. But if you're playing Miami, we say this all the time about Marcus Jones. Great matchup against Miami.
And they're definitely, and I what's encouraging, you see guys like Alex Austin having success, and you see guys like Marcus Jones having success, is there's now an ability to mix and match.
Yeah.
And you don't have to handcuff yourself on your personnel. You have the depth, and you have the diversity of skill sets to be able to play different teams in different ways, and that's when you can truly be a game plan defense, which is ultimately what they want to be.
Yeah, and we should also mention on defense that Matthew Judon is out there participating.
And he looks good.
Looks like a full participant in these practices. He's not holding in. He's not limited in any sort of way, it doesn't seem like. And there still seems to be, the one front seven guy I'd point to, there still seems to be a decent amount of buzz about Keon White and his role in all of this. They've been in a lot of their two down lineman pass rushing fronts so far because it's such a pass heavy time of year. And he's been in that group, and he's been sort of working as more of a stand-up player. I still feel like we have to figure out what he is. Like, is he a stand-up guy? Is he a hand-in-the-dirt guy? Is he an outside linebacker? Maybe a guy that can rush inside, at times too, and reduce inside over a guard or something like that. But Keon White is continuing to buzz a little bit, I would say. Is there anybody else on defense that you feel like deserves a shout?
Sort of. And this is where I get into my special teams take.
Okay.
You know who's been playing a good amount of safety? Who? Even a little bit with the ones?
Brendan Schooler. Yeah,
I have
noticed that.
I wonder, this is one of the big questions of the post-Belichick era. How is it going to work with these special team-specific players? We've seen Christian Ellis, Joe Giles Harris get a ton of run on defense, guys that we think are going to be in that role. I wonder with Schooler, is it one of two things? I guess it could be a little bit of both. All right, we want you as our special teams captain, but we need you ready because you're also going to be an emergency safety for us. And they don't have a ton of depth at deep safety. It's Jalen Hawkins, and then he's kind of been the next guy when they want to put Duggar and Peppers both in the box.
Yeah.
Or is it, we have Jalen Hawkins who can play special teams like you, and he can play free safety, so what more can you do for us kind of thing, right? So and in the past, he's played there a little bit, but it's been a lot more this summer than he did the last 2 years. In the past, he was kind of just with that third unit. It felt like they needed a body to get 11 guys on the field, and he was out there. No, he's getting like real safety reps.
Yeah.
And I think he might have repped over Joshua Bledsoe at times.
Yeah.
So
we should mention, without Marte Mapu, so Marte Mapu, not a deep safety necessarily, but it's just another safety that wasn't practicing. But I feel like the Jalen Hawkins
but even yesterday. But it
was more with the twos yesterday. Today, I noticed it with the ones.
Yeah, but it does feel like, and maybe it's just on an emergency basis, and that's probably all it should be.
Yeah.
It does feel like they're getting Brandon Schooler ready to play some safety.
Jalen Hawkins, that whole thing seems to be cooling off a little bit.
You think so?
Maybe
I feel like he's been out there a good amount.
Maybe I haven't noticed it as much as I should. Again, when we do the shows during practice, I've not.
He was right. He was also playing some slot corner today.
Okay, so maybe I missed that.
They're putting him.
Watch for that.
He's been on the field a lot, but it hasn't just been at free. Like he was in the box a little bit today. I saw him. He got a couple of reps in the slot. So I think they're just getting him ready for a very multiple role.
All right. One more quick thing on the. I actually have liked what I've seen out of Marcellus Dial too. He's had some good coverage
I haven't noticed
moments.
him a ton one way or the other.
Some good coverage moments, like away from the ball and stuff like that I've seen. I really like their corners.
I do. It's their best position.
Yeah, I feel like it really is. I mean, there's some questions about who's going to play where and that sort of thing, but it does. Christian Gonzalez and Jonathan Jones as your top two is already pretty solid, and they have some options behind them. So I'm pretty optimistic. They get out there at practice yesterday, and I couldn't help but it was their starting defense, and they come out there and they have Christian Gonzalez on one side, Jonathan Jones on the other, Peppers and Duggar up top. They have Dietrich Wise, Godshaw, Barmore, Judon on the outside, Tavai Bentley, and I'm just like, I mean,
that's a unit.
That's a unit, man.
That's a unit.
Like that. Like I'm like thinking to myself, just compared to the rest of the league, and there aren't a whole lot of defenses in the NFL that you look at 11 starting caliber players,
and a lot of those guys have really good backups.
Yeah,
you didn't. I don't think you said Keon White.
No.
Like you didn't mention Daniel Aquali, who's back and healthy. You didn't mention Marcus Jones.
There's just not a whole lot of holes.
No,
there's not a whole lot of holes. Really quickly, before we wrap here, is it just me, and maybe you disagree with this completely because you definitely pay more attention to special teams than I do? It doesn't feel like they've done a ton of special teams through the first 2 days.
They did one sort of punt on air thing today. That was it. No, there hasn't been a lot of special teams.
So are you upset? Are you disappointed? Is this hurt your feelings? Like they've basically treated your phase of the game like it's nothing.
One, it's a long camp. Two, outside of field goal kicking, I'd like to see them do some, because that's a battle. Like, let's see that.
Yeah.
But like the kickoff stuff, the punt stuff, that's so much more meaningful with pads. Like you got to be able to hit.
Is there a chance that the kickoff
teams.
stuff is they're gonna hide?
I also think there's an element of that too. They're just gonna cram that when they put Pop Douglas back on the field and all that after we're at it. No, I think there's a real chance they're gonna hide the kickoff stuff. But like I haven't done the stopwatch yet. 2 days, no stopwatch.
That's exactly what I thought of.
So
I was like, we don't have hang times.
But you know what? You want to work with gunners and all that? You got to be able to hit. So I like to see it, and ask me again when we do the show next week and we've had a few padded practices.
I want you to come in here angry if there's not more special teams next week.
If they haven't done it by this time next week, they'll have had what? Monday will be padded.
Yep.
Probably Tuesday and then 2 of the other 3 days. Probably 3 of the 4 days next week will be padded. Yeah, I'll be a little annoyed. At that point, I'll be like, what are we doing? Special teams wasn't great. We need to be better at this. But I
love it.
Outside of the field goals,
yeah,
non-padded practices, if they want to use this, they got a new offense to get installed. They're playing catch-up a little bit. Yeah, I can understand that.
Poor Jeremy Springer is just chilling.
Is he chilling or is he in the lab?
He's collecting a paycheck.
Is he cooking?
He's doing the American dream right
now.
now.
He has work. No, he's working because I said they're not doing field goal stuff. I'm talking about team field goal. Most of the time, and it's been a lot of 7-on-7 and 11-on-11, that second field is wide open, and he's right there standing over Joey Sly and Chad Ryland as they're kicking. As they're kicking field goals off the tee. So he's got 2 kickers to figure out. No, he's working.
We get a lot of questions about, has this been different than a Belichick practice? Like, what's different between this and Belichick's practices? Bill Belichick is not going 2 full practices without doing any special teams.
No.
You're bringing out the stopwatch within the first 30 minutes of the day you want a training camp with Bill Belichick. Like, you are not getting this deep into training camp with this little special teams.
They'll get there.
Different.
I'm not going to, again, outside of field goals, which they could work on a little more, I'm not going to bemoan missed special teams reps in non-padded practices. They don't hold a ton of weight.
Fair enough, but this is different. Not good or
it's
bad.
Different. No, it's different.
Not good or bad, but this is different.
Again, if they're still not doing it next week when the pads come on, different story.
Last thing on differences between Belichick and this. It's very, very, very early to be talking about scheme and stuff like that. But defensively, it feels like nothing changed. Like, I'm sure they're going to have a couple wrinkles here and there.
That's another one that I think once we're out of there, they'll start putting that
and
stuff
I'm sure
in.
that DeMarcus Covington and Gerard Maye are going to want to put their own spin on things and have different wrinkles and maybe be a little bit more aggressive in certain spots, certainly on first and second down. I saw a great stat in the FTN Fantasy almanac that Aaron Schatz puts out. The Patriots were near the bottom of the league in pressure rate on first and second down defensively, and then they were top 5 on third down. So Bill was not all the pressure.
Such a Bill stat.
All the pressure was coming on third down, right? And they weren't cooking up. That I think could change. But as of right now, if you told me, is it a new playbook on defense? They're running the Belichick scheme defensively. And maybe we'll see some wrinkles down the road. But I'm not expecting them to reinvent the wheel.
It's a down the road thing.
Yeah, I'm not expecting them to reinvent the wheel. But I'm glad you're not too upset that you haven't been able to record any hang
If you
times.
can't tell,
I was worried about you for a little bit.
If you can't tell, I don't get too worked up about non-padded practices. I don't.
It's probably a good approach. I try, but
I've been burned. No, I learned my lesson on that. I've been burned. You had who did I have? You had Maurice Harris. Who was the wide receiver?
Oh, yeah.
It's 29. I don't remember. There's a wide receiver.
I think
2019.
one of our very first arguments was over Gunnar Olszewski, and I'll never.
But I was right about Gunnar Olszewski.
Weren't you?
I told you. You said direct quote. He does not belong in an NFL training camp. He didn't. He is an all-pro. He is an all-pro.
He had one punt return against the Chargers in 2020, and he won all-pro because
he is an all-pro. And you said he did not belong in an NFL training camp.
I was talking about him as a receiver.
I'll
admit when I was wrong.
No, that's not what you were
wrong about.
That's not what you were saying. You said he did not belong in a kid. You did not qualify it like that because that doesn't make sense. I got really excited about Philip Dorsett one year. That's what it was.
Well, that's fair. He at least was an NFL player.
I liked him before he got here.
He's not Maurice Harris. Maurice Harris was a different
thing.
For
people who don't know who Maurice Harris is, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah.
Me and Evan's first year, spring practice. Neither of us had ever seen a spring practice because those aren't open to the media. We go, and Maurice Harris was this guy the Patriots had signed. He'd bounced around the league. He's 27. Wow, he was younger. He's only 31. He was in his mid-20s. He'd been in Washington for a few years, and the Patriots signed him in a one-year deal late in free agency. And he tore it up in the spring. He was awesome. He was great. He was catching deep balls left and right from Tom Brady. And we walked out of there thinking, oh, my God, they found a guy. And out of nowhere, this free agent off the street, he's dominating. And he was this tall, skinny guy. He's kind of built like Taekwon. Yeah. And then they put the pads on, and he completely disappeared. I don't think he made it through camp. I think he got cut before camp ended.
To be fair to him, though, Brady was into it.
Right,
Brady
no, and I don't mean to pick on him.
Yeah, Brady was running over to him.
Brady kept throwing to him, but because he was always open because they couldn't hit him, and he was fast enough to run by him.
Yeah.
And you learned the lesson that there's more to it than that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we have to wrap, but Jack in Michigan called in, so we'll end on this. What's up, Jack? How you doing? Jack.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, you're on the air. What's up?
Quick question. I am flying out to training camp the week of the 12th. Are you guys going to be there signing things? I want to get a Catch-22 flag created for myself for you guys to sign.
Well, that's amazing. I didn't know we had a that big of a fan, and I really appreciate that. That's like very flattering. Yeah, we're at every camp practice. I mean, I am. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I'll be there.
Yeah,
there's only 2 practices that week. It's 12th and 13th.
Yeah, so we'll be at every practice. Alex is much better than I am about poking around at pre-practice because we do Unfiltered live on most days. But by that time, we won't be doing the show live during practice, so I'll definitely be down there, and you should come say hi, or we can find you, or vice versa. Send us a
If somebody
DM.
has a catch, you have like a flag with the show logo on it?
They do. I went to look for a PU or a Catch-22 flag, but they don't have them. So some sites do a custom flag. You just send in an image, and they make it for you.
If I see somebody waving a Catch-22 flag, I will absolutely come over.
100%. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I
Seconded.
appreciate it, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks, Jack.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for listening. That's
So
a
we've
good
each
call
got to
to end
sign
on.
like the inside, like each sign a 2. I think is the way to do it, right?
Yeah, I mean, Maureen, we need merch. Like that's what we're like. He's looking for a flag, and we don't have a flag to sell him. Like this is an opportunity. Where's Mr. Kraft? Like I'm giving him more money.
I hope they're listening upstairs.
Yeah, right.
I
mean,
still think like a Patriots jersey that's number 22 that says catch on the back.
that's not a
or
bad
even a
idea
jersey.
either. I feel like we could make a T-shirt with this logo on it easily.
Do a jersey with the 22 and it says catch as the name. That's a
love it.
no-brainer, isn't it?
I love it. We're making more money for this organization. What good guys we are. What company
When they pay DK Metcalf the bag next spring, it's because of all the Catch-22 jerseys and flags.
When Matthew Judon gets his extension,
Yeah.
I want him to come thank us.
we
because
haven't sold
we
the
made
merch
him
doesn't exist yet.
Well, it will.
All right.
It will. All right. We're going to have to wrap it up, but we will be back next week, probably around the same time because we write and we have different things going on, so it might be a little bit later. But before we sign off, Bridgestone, the official tire of the New England Patriots, is proud to partner with Sullivan Tire, New England's headquarters for quality Bridgestone tires. Visit sullivantire.com to find a location near you. And one last time, easy to drink, easy to enjoy. Bud Light, the official beer sponsor of the New England Patriots. PU live from practice tomorrow, 11 to 1 when practice apps. Catch-22 will be back Thursday next week. We'll see you guys then.
Thank you for downloading this podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Google Play, and everywhere else you listen. Like the show? Please rate and review us. Listener comments and ratings help keep us high in the podcast rankings so new listeners can find us. Be sure to check patriots.com for more news and more podcasts.